The story begins somewhere in the Scotland mountains, with three men talking about catching fish. Alec wants to shoot them straight out of the water, but Rob thinks it's stupid to waste bullets on bloody fish, and besides, it might attract God knows what to their location. Alec then suggests using grenades to blow them up, but that would surely kill the fish, and there would be nothing left to eat. Ian quietly listens to the conversation, immersed in his own thoughts, as the group leaves the river and continues the journey. They are reunited with the others. Anya, who is pregnant, but after her boyfriend died some time ago, her brother Mark is all that she has left. The group spends most summers in the highlands where it stayed reasonably cool, then comes down to scavenge when the snow began to fall. They've been doing this for the past 4 years, and so far it's been going great. For entertainment, they had Rob and Alec. They were like a radio. When you got bored, you could tune them out. John is the oldest among them and used to work the rigs. He's the sort of guy you want around. Harry was an interesting one. He claimed to be Prince Harry, but when the outbreak began, his face got injured and they couldn't tell if he was telling the truth or not. Ricky was the real bonus of the group. He was a paramedic, unlike Pat, who was just a useless prick with no real skills. The group spends the night in an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, and Ian remembers what happened to his wife, Penny. When everything started, the two of them hid in the attic and watched as the Cross took over Glasgow. After a few weeks, the streets began to empty and the city started burning. Everyone was either dead or hiding just like them. They decided to leave the city and followed the road out of the city, stopping to hide at every howl or crackle. The highway was full of abandoned cars and dead people, but out of nowhere, a car came driving towards them. The driver was turned into a savage, and she threw a baby towards Penny, hitting a nearby car. The impact caused the blood to splatter everywhere, landing on Penny's face and infecting her. She asked her husband to run and leave her behind, but it was too late. Another car came driving towards her and instantly killed her. Ian didn't run. Instead, he walked. He walked off the road and out across the fields and couldn't stop himself from crying. After a few hours, he returned to the highway and buried his wife, putting her to rest. Before the outbreak, he used to work in a bookshop. Very little of the knowledge he had was practically acquired. He wasn't resourceful, wasn't any kind of fighter, but he was smart enough to leech onto guys like Rick and John and make them listen to him. The next day, they spot a large group of Crossed, around 40 people coming up north toward them. Harry thinks he can kill about 20 of them with his sniper rifle, but the other ones will overrun them eventually. To the east, another smaller group is walking towards them, but if they shoot them, that will surely get the larger group's attention. Alec comes up with a stupid idea and throws rocks towards them, causing a distraction. One of the rocks hits the big woman in the head and she attacks the others, thinking they were the ones hitting her. This stupid plan seems to be working, and she takes out both of her companions, leaving her alone. Alec then lures her into the nearby river and she jumps after him without thinking. The group then picks up a large tree trunk and traps her underneath, unable to move. Ian makes a move and jumps on top of her, stomping her face and causing her to drown. Alec was the hero of the hour after that one, though he couldn't understand why Rob still wouldn't let him fish with hand grenades. As I mentioned in the first issue, Pat was a useless prick who wasn't doing much to help the group. On top of that, he stole some biscuits from the group's food rations because he was very hungry and couldn't take it anymore. However, if they all did the same thing, they wouldn't last very long in this new, harsh world. The big group of Crossed was still after them, so the group decides to leave him behind in hopes of stalling them. Rick uses a sharp knife to cut his leg tendons, basically crippling him and leaving him unable to run away. This is not the first time Ian has left someone behind. He did it once before when the outbreak began. 3 days after his wife was killed, he joined a bigger group which was hiding in one of the houses. However, they were constantly arguing about who was going to lead the group and what they should do next. Shauna, a mother with 2 kids, thinks that Ian has some pretty good ideas and wants to follow him. He tells her that things are not looking good for the group. They are constantly fighting, while other members are too old or too useless to do anything. He wants to leave and offers to take her with him, along with the kids, but she isn't sure what to do. In the end, she decided to stay behind with the bigger group, while he left on his own. In the present, the group continues the journey, not knowing if the Crossed came across Pat or not. Anya was close to giving birth, but this means she has to stop a lot, slowing the group down and allowing the Crossed to get closer to them. They find a plane that had crashed in the middle of a pine forest, but from the looks of it, everyone's been dead for a long time. They set camp inside the wreckage, and Ian builds up the courage and tells everyone what he thinks. He wants to leave Anya behind because she is slowing the group too much, and once the baby comes, it's gonna be even worse. The others disagree with him, calling it inhumane, and Mark defends his little sister. Eventually, the group casts a vote to see what they should do, but only Harry and John voted to abandon her. During the same night, Anya goes into labor, probably caused by all the stress of what was going on. In the morning, John claims that she and her kid had both died, and they need to leave this place before the Crossed arrive. The Crossed caught up with them from behind and got Harry first, cutting his body in half using a big saw. He quickly turned into one of them, but his torso was still alive and crawling on the ground. The crazies were a lot fewer now, maybe 21 or 22, but still a lot more than what they could handle. Ian comes up with a plan to split into 2 groups and go back for Harry to retrieve his gun. They didn't have many weapons, and his gun was automatic, and they could use it to kill off the infected. Ian, Rick and Mark form one group, while John groups together with Rob and Alec, who was slower than the rest, and he wanted to make sure they wouldn't get left behind like they did with Anya. The plan was working, and the Crossed were splitting up. Some of them were going after Ian and his people, so they formed a line and decided to fight instead of running. Let them get close, and then shoot the quickest ones first. If they make every bullet count, maybe there's a way out of this after all. The plan works, and they are able to kill off a bunch of infected, but the attack was far from over. A large group is headed towards them, so they try to run away, but Rick steps on a loose rock and falls into a crevasse. The Crossed jump after him and Ian could hear him fighting, but there was nothing he could do. They get closer to Harry's body, but there is no sign of the gun. It was supposed to be behind him somewhere. Mark takes out his binoculars and spots a group of Crossed heading their way, but one of them was carrying his sister. She died during labor and they buried her underground, but they managed to dig her up and turn her into one of theirs. Mark freaks out and goes after them, trying to get to his sister and free her, but that's a bad idea. The Crossed overrun him and then pin him to the ground, while one of them sits on his face and beats him. Ian finally arrives at the body, but he couldn't see the gun anywhere. It was buried in the heavy snow, but eventually he finds it and gets to work. He remembers everything that Harry told him. Aim properly and make every shot count, because the bullets are small, designed to shock. Keep the selector on single shot. If you're close enough, you don't need full auto, you're finished anyway. He quickly empties out one full magazine and then searches Harry's backpack for a spare one. And just like that, he surprised even himself, taking out Crossed after Crossed without missing a single shot. One of them gets a little too close and shoots Harry in the head, causing it to explode and splatter blood everywhere, including on Ian's face. The same thing happened to his wife, which means that he is likely infected and will soon cross. He takes out a hand grenade and wants to take his own life, but he has a hard time pulling the pin. The Crossed eventually surround him, and he is left without options. But taking his own life wasn't as easy as he thought. In another part of the world, Greg is a man traveling alone, who hasn't made contact with other humans for the past 1,000 miles. He sees a beautiful woman somewhere in front of him and decides to get closer to check her out. However, she ambushes him in a nearby forest and pepper sprays him in the eyes. She ties him down and begins interrogating him, claiming that if he wants to stay alive, he has to answer her questions. Before the outbreak, his relationship with his wife wasn't great, so he went on many solo adventures with his bike. When the outbreak began, his wife was alone with the kids when their neighbor attacked her. He heard on the phone how they killed them, so he never went back home. He just stayed on the road, surviving all this time. He always took his camping gear along and fished in the nearby rivers to keep himself from starving to death. Steve, the woman who ambushed him, believes his story and sets him free. She agrees to let him come along as long as he keeps up. She was fit and strong and didn't want to get slowed down. She used to work in military intelligence and did 3 tours in Afghanistan, working as a prisoner conditioning interrogation specialist. She thinks the Islamists are behind the outbreak. Maybe they created some bioweapon and unleashed it on the American population. But Greg thinks this whole thing is just nature cleansing itself of humans. After she was discharged from the army, she worked as personal security, tasked with protecting a paranoid big-shot class action lawyer somewhere in Atlanta. Somewhere in the swamps of Florida, Leon and his redneck family have barricaded themselves inside a camp. His father Clint is a real tough guy piece of shit, and the whole family was involved with drugs. They survived by hunting gators and cooking them, and thanks to his father's large stash of guns, they've been able to fend off any Crossed that came their way. Somewhere else, 2 twin sisters, Ashlyn and Ashley, were trying to escape a fire that was ravaging their home. They were forced to kill their dad after he turned Crossed and attacked them. They used to live with their mom and their piece of shit stepdad, but they were attacked by the Crossed and barely made it out in one piece. Luckily, Ashley has an NRA Junior Sharpshooter medal and is pretty good with a rifle in her hands, which allowed them to stay alive until now. Steve was stuck inside a building with the paranoid lawyer when the outbreak began, and witnessed a lot of horrible things from the safety of her window. She learned a lot by watching how the Crossed behave, but some things were too horrible and she had to do something. She shot a couple of them using her sniper rifle and then escaped by jumping through the window and using a parachute to land to safety. After a good night's rest, Greg wants to continue the journey heading south, hoping to make it all the way to Florida. In the Everglades, the 2 sisters were paddling through the gator-infested waters. and came across the militia compound where Leon and his family were staying. They choose to avoid it and paddle in another direction. They don't want to risk running into someone who turns them into child brides. The people inside were having a good time, drinking alcohol and getting blowjobs, while Leon was keeping guard in the watchtower. He falls asleep towards the early hours of the morning and fails to spot a group of Crossed who used the boat to get there. The dogs go into a frenzy and attack them, and a fight breaks out. Leon eventually wakes up and starts shooting, quickly dealing with all of them, but the damage was already done. His father's best dog was killed during the attack. He loved him more than he does him. As punishment, he kicked the living shit out of him, punching and kicking him mercilessly. He then threw him inside the shit pit, where he was left for the next couple of hours. Greg recalls the worst atrocity he came across so far, which was a group of teenagers impaled on a giant stick. He doesn't even know how they managed to get them all impaled so high. After dealing with a lonely Crossed, Steve gets a little too excited and starts hitting on Greg. She lifts her shirt, exposing her breasts, and then jumps the poor man, using him to lay off some steam. She was kind of freaky and left some serious marks on his back. This was one of Greg's wildest experiences so far. Leon was eventually set free after 8 hours of sitting in the shit pit, but only because one of them wanted to take a dump. The others didn't want anything to do with him after that, and he wasn't invited to the barbecue in the evening. But he liked it that way. He didn't like them that much anyway, and he was a good fisherman. However, he wanted revenge for what his father did to him and came up with a diabolical idea. Greg wants to talk about what happened between them last night, but this pisses Steve off and she gets violent. She doesn't want to speak about it ever again and threatens him. After walking for many hours, they arrive at a swamp and are forced to ditch the bikes. Luckily, they stumble into a nearby sailing camp and find one of the boats that was left behind. Out of nowhere, a giant boar attacks Greg and he runs away screaming for help. Back at the militia camp, Leon was cooking something special inside his meth trailer lab. He used infected blood from one of the Crossed to mix it together with drugs, creating a special cocktail that could infect others. His plan worked, and after taking a sip, his cousin was quickly turned into a monster and then went on a rampage inside the camp. Leon then escapes using an airboat, but not before blowing up the docks using some hand grenades. The twin sisters found an abandoned shack and set up camp for a few days, but after returning home one evening, they find Leon sniffing their panties, which were left outside to dry. They ambush him and threaten him, but he claims he only came here because he ran out of gas and needs it for the airboat. He offers the girls some food, and they agree to lower their guard and trust him. Greg and Steve travel through the Everglades and arrive at the militia camp, but by now, everyone was already across. Well, almost everyone. Somehow Leon's dad managed to escape in one piece and he took his dogs along. While cooking fish for breakfast, Leon couldn't stop himself from staring at the two sisters who were taking a morning bath. He claims he wants to head south after he heard a preacher on the radio talking about putting together a crew of survivors on an ark, hoping to find a place and start over. The girls agree to join him in his journey, but they have no idea if the preacher is still alive or not. He confesses what he did to his redneck family, but claims they deserved it because they are one of the worst kinds of people you could think of. The dogs are able to pick up on their scent and ambush Greg and Steve inside the forest. Clint asks if they've seen his piece of shit son, but they had no idea who he was talking about. Eventually, he agrees to let them be, claiming they are white enough and doesn't want to bother them. The girls use their canoes to paddle through the swamp, while Leon sits in the back enjoying the ride. He makes up for it by fishing and cooking dinner. It's the least they can do for him. The father was sniffing their tracks but runs into his family from the compound, who were crossed now. They quickly turn him into one of their own and together they go hunting. The father and son are eventually reunited, but they weren't alone. Greg was nearby and he wants to intervene, even though Steve thinks it's a bad idea. They are able to take out the Crossed, but one of them shoots a bazooka at them, causing a massive explosion. The dad wants to take advantage of this and unzips his pants, hoping to Steve while she lays unconscious on the ground. Luckily, Leon was nearby and shoots him in the head with his crossbow, instantly ending him. After waking up, Steve is furious with Greg for getting involved and nearly getting them killed, but she eventually calms down. The two groups introduce each other and they agree to join forces and head south, hoping to find the preacher and his ark of survivors. But paddling through the swamp wasn't easy. The sun was burning like crazy. There were flies everywhere, and Steve was throwing up constantly. They stop for a quick break, and the girls take another bath to clean off the stench. Steve asks Greg which one of them he likes the most, but they are teenagers and he doesn't like jailbait. Her vomiting keeps getting worse and there was no way around it, but Ashlyn suspects she might be pregnant. She tells Greg the truth and he is just as shocked as she is. They've only been together one night, but she doesn't want to pressure him, claiming she bears all the responsibility. She's the one who seduced him after all. Even though this was possibly the worst time to get pregnant, Ashlyn and Leon sneak somewhere alone and make love. Her sister comes along and calls her a for getting involved in a time like this. She goes all out and beats the crap out of her sister, knocking her on the ground and punching her senseless. She then threatens Leon, claiming they are twin sisters and now he's gonna have to do her as well. When the sisters returned, Leon was nowhere to be seen, but Steve claims it's none of their business what happened to him. They are not cops after all. The long journey south continues and the group bonds together as the weeks pass, with Greg and Steve becoming somewhat of a parent figure to the sisters. However, Steve keeps pressuring him for an answer, demanding to know which one of them he likes the most. Her hormones were acting up and her belly was getting bigger, and it was getting harder to move as the weeks passed. Eventually they come across a camp for fat kids, but the place looks abandoned. Ashley goes in for a closer look and steps on a bear trap, which causes her to scream in agony. Steve thinks the trap might be tainted with crossed blood and wants to take her out, but her sister defends her. Out of nowhere, arrows and rocks come flying towards them. They were being ambushed by a group of fat kids who were crossed. The group runs inside the nearby house, leaving Ashley all alone outside, still with her foot inside the trap. Ashlyn goes outside to help her sister, but the others refuse to help her, claiming her sister is already gone. In the morning, Greg takes point and gives directions, while Steve takes out a few of them outside. They torch the place, creating a giant fire that engulfs the entire building, creating a distraction and allowing them to escape through the back. They spend the next few days running, but the fat kids were after them, slowly getting closer. Steve was barely able to move anymore, and Greg was helping her cross the sand dunes, slowly advancing towards the ocean. They find an abandoned ship and want to mount a defense inside, but Steve wants him to leave her stranded and save himself. That's what she would do. They spend the night inside and Greg touches her belly for the first time, trying to catch the baby moving. But in the morning, Steve shoots his leg, crippling him, rendering him unable to run any further. She then abandons him inside the ship, leaving him behind and claiming she has a baby to think about. It wasn't long before the Crossed found him and surrounded him from every direction. He wanted to take his own life, but he couldn't, when suddenly, two familiar faces show up. Ashley and Ashlyn were now crossed and they jump on top of him, asking him to party with them. Steve spends the next couple of days wandering through the beach and arriving at an abandoned hotel. She uses her last shells at check-in, dealing with a few crossed that were still wandering the empty corridors. She finds the presidential suite and instantly goes into labor. It's not like humans haven't been doing this for thousands of years. The pain was too much for her to bear and she screams in agony, making enough noise that it was picked up by the crossed who were still tracking her. She had hoped the baby would come out stillborn, but he starts crying, claiming his right to life. Greg was now a crossed as well, but the sisters were using him as their lapdog, crawling on the ground. Steve remembers her life before the outbreak began. She was such a doing it with anyone she came in contact with, including all of her former colleagues in the army and Greg. The sisters find her placenta in the bedroom, proving that Steve already gave birth. Greg picks up the scent and follows the tracks down the corridor, leading them towards the kitchen. However, Steve had prepared a trap, a gas leak that, when coming in contact with their torch, causes a massive explosion. Only 3 crossed came out alive, the 2 sisters and Greg, but they were in bad shape. The mother does her best to evade and survive, but her energy was low, and she was bleeding into the sand, leaving a trail to be followed. She gives up and abandons the baby, claiming there's no way to save both of them, and she might as well survive. If the baby is lucky, the crossed will not find her in the sand, and she could return once she deals with them, but that's a big if. However, she couldn't abandon her child and returns to him. But unfortunately, the 2 sisters had already found him. She asks Ashlyn to hand over her baby and she agrees, just as long as she eats a piece of Greg's flesh. If she wants to be strong and raise her baby, she has to become one of them and get infected, adapt, or die. Left without any other options, Steve agrees and takes a piece of flesh, claiming she never did fit in all that well with humans anyway. In a small town called Palmer, Edmund Wickenthorpe is graduating high school and remembers his 4 years spent here. Unfortunately, Edmund peed his pants in the 6th grade and everyone's been calling him Yellow Belly ever since. He is kinda jealous of the cool kids, including Hank Smith and Jim Morgan, the most popular kids in high school. Sweeney, Mac, and Stevie are all redneck assholes, and he couldn't be happier to never have to see them again. The prom queen is a beautiful girl by the name of Katie, but Edmund really has a thing for Betty Ford, one of the prettiest girls in the school. One time she ran into him, and he still remembers her breasts pressing up against him, but she was disgusted, remarking that the yellow belly just touched her and now she needs to wash. After the graduation, all the cool kids went to a party to celebrate, but he and his family went to a small diner for dinner. Afterwards, his dad takes him and his little brother Eli to a nearby town that had a circus. Eli wants to see the main attraction, a freak that was being kept inside a cage that looked terrifying. A snake was set free inside the cage and the freak picks it up and takes a bite, much to the horror of the people watching. As it turns out, the man was nothing more than an alcoholic man who was paid to act crazy and do stupid things. After the show, a strange man with a cross sign on his face enters their tent, but he wasn't friendly and immediately attacks them. Edmund and his dad attend another show and he is mesmerized by a beautiful girl and her horse riding skills. But what he was really looking at was her ass. Out of nowhere, the freak from the previous show enters the tent and starts attacking everybody, but he wasn't alone. Other people working in the circus were now bearing the cross on their faces, acting crazy and killing everyone in their path. Everyone panics and runs outside, but the place was soon overrun with crust. The dad hides his two sons and goes back to fight off a clown, but it didn't work out for him. He was overrun by 3 people, who pinned him to the ground and took advantage of him. After turning into one of the crossed, he returns and kills Eli, who was hiding in a barrel next to Edmund. The whole scene was traumatizing, but Edmund couldn't stop himself from thinking about the girl's ass from earlier. He was too afraid to get out and help his brother, and in the end, everyone in the park was either dead or severely mutilated. He sees the girl from before riding another man on top of a pile of bodies and thinks that's totally hot. He drives back home but doesn't say anything to his mother who was reading on the couch. Instead, he goes straight into his closet and hides. After a few hours of hiding in his closet, Edmund told his mother everything that happened at the circus and she called the sheriff. The sheriff didn't believe him because the entire story sounds crazy, but he did agree to check it out. After killing everyone tonight, the circus geeks packed their stuff and headed towards the next town, which is where Edmund lives. They arrive at the edge of the town at a trailer park, but it was still early and there was nobody out yet. Sweeney is one of the kids that bullies Edmund, but he has a terrible relationship with his dad who is a piece of shit. Out of nowhere, the crossed walk inside their trailer and kill the dad, while Sweeney makes a run for it with his dad's shotgun. Edmund claims his father told him to hide inside a barrel, but he feels sorry about not doing anything to save his brother. He knows he's such a coward. The circus geeks arrive in his neighborhood and prepare their attack, going from home to home. They break inside their home and the mother tells him to hide in his closet and not come out until it's over. He hid like a coward once again, while the geeks did his mother on the kitchen table. His colleagues from school eventually find him a couple of hours later and recruit him to go after the geeks. They weren't kids anymore. Most of them were 18 already and knew how to shoot guns. After killing a bunch of them, they grouped inside Seaver's fish and tackle store, which had plenty of supplies and weapons. That girl that Edmund has a crush on approaches him. She was scared because her parents were killed. Out of nowhere, a large truck drives straight into the building and kills a bunch of them. The place quickly turns to chaos as the kids fight to stay alive, but the crossed were just too many. Edmund is scared again and tries to make a run through the back door, but Sweeney doesn't want to let him through. He then points his gun and shoots the young kid, acknowledging that he's a complete and utter failure of a human being, but at least he's alive. After the attack, he fell asleep in the nearby bushes and woke up confused. He goes back to the hunting store to see if anyone was still alive, but he only finds bodies laying everywhere. He lost his mom, his dad, his little brother, and all his school friends, and finally he has enough. He goes into the nearby town and wants to warn its people that the crossed are coming their way, but nobody even pays attention to him and completely ignores him. Luckily, there is a roadhouse nearby and bikers kick ass, so he decides to tell them about the crossed. Rick, the gang leader, agrees to listen to him and they eventually go to see with their own eyes. After realizing that he was telling the truth, within 2 hours, bikers and biker gangs from all over started gathering at the roadhouse. They have one final party before going into battle, and one of the girls likes Edmund a lot, so she lets him fuck her. Her boyfriend sees them and punches him in the face, but as it turns out, bikers share their women amongst each other, so they turn Edmund into one of their own, giving him his first tattoo. The bikers attack the crossed head-on, but they had no idea just how dangerous they really were. Luckily, there were enough bikers to turn the fight in their favor, but the fight was far from easy. Donna, the girl that let Edmund fuck her, is being chased by one of the clowns, who turns out to be Joe Rigg, one of Edmund's high school friends. He blows his brains out using a powerful shotgun, but when Donna turns around, her face was covered in blood. Edmund panics and kills her as well, but she wasn't turned into the crossed. He feels horrible about killing her and starts crying, calling himself worthless and getting ready to end his own life when someone approaches him. A man named Harold Lore watched the entire scene and tries to comfort him, claiming that the world needs people like him and that one day he's gonna rule the world. Harold claims that the world is going to end, but the crossed are gonna die as well. When the dust settles, the cowards like him and Edmund are the ones who are gonna rule the world. While the fight was still going on and the bikers were distracted with the crossed, Harold convinces Edmund that both of them should fuck Donna while her body was still warm. Edmund does it, but the entire thing disgusts him and he pukes his guts out. Harold then leaves, but the fight rages on and the bikers were slowly but surely winning the fight. Edmund tries to make it look like one of the crossed killed Donna by placing one of the bodies on top of her. The fight finally ends and the bikers are victorious, so of course they celebrate by drinking more alcohol. Nicole, another hot woman, hits on him, calling him a hero because if it wasn't for his warning, all of them would have been ambushed by the crossed. She unzips his pants and wants to give him a job, but Edmund was still shocked by the events and wasn't getting hard. He thinks it's better to tell the truth that he killed Donna and then ripped her corpse. Nicole is shocked and wants to warn the others, but he ties her under the desk. The guilt is too much for him to bear, so he decides to tell the others as well, but that wasn't a good idea. The bikers plan to kill him and tie his limbs to 4 bikes, wanting to dismember him for what he did. But before they could begin, the crossed come out of nowhere and drive into them using a couple of police cars. Edmund goes back inside for Nicole and saves her from the crossed when they rush inside. Betty Ford, his high school crush, was now one of the crossed and drives towards them, but Edmund takes his shotgun and puts an end to it. For the first time in his life, he did something courageous by saving Nicole and keeping her alive. She hits on him again in the forest, and this time he didn't have any problems getting it up. After making love, they spend the night cuddling, but Nicole wakes up in the middle of the night and picks up a rock. She then uses it to bash Edmund's head, hitting him multiple times and not stopping until he was breathless. She calls him a coward and accuses him of killing her friend Donna. This was her revenge. 8 people have their tongues stuck nailed shut to the dining table, while the house around them is on fire. If they don't get out soon, they are all going to burn alive, but the only way to free themselves is by cutting off their own tongues. The story now jumps to a few days ago, when a group of young writers arrived in the small town of Stableford, Wisconsin. A very famous writer by the name of Gideon Wells invited them to his mansion retreat, where he plans to be their mentor for the next couple of weeks. This small town is famous for the number of people who are handicapped, but this isn't by accident. Most of them did it to themselves in order to scam the insurance companies to pay them a lot of money. In his latest book, Wells called the locals a community of inbred cattle fuckers, so they don't like him very much, and by association they don't like these young writers who came to visit him. Wells is tall and handsome and very charismatic, and he wants everyone to play a little game. Before starting, he wants everyone to sign a copy of the legal waiver, which gives him the absolute right to exploit their experiences and likenesses. But if they refuse, they are welcome to leave, and he won't feature them in his next novel. For the next 6 weeks, they won't have any contact with the outside world. There is no TV here, no internet, and they are forced to hand over their cell phones, iPads, and laptops. In their rooms, they're gonna find a short manuscript. Based on their self-assessments, he developed a character profile for each of them. He wants them to study it, and when they come down for dinner this evening, everyone will be in character and remain in that role until they leave. According to the manuscript, Clooney is supposed to be an asshole that everyone hates, while his girlfriend Tabitha is supposed to be a horny who sleeps with everyone. Jay, the fat guy with the green shirt, is supposed to play a guy who easily loses his temper, and Wells wants him to play his part and get mad at the butler for spilling wine on him. Wells wants him to punch the butler, remarking that they won't mind it, and they get paid a lot of money for this. Next is Clooney's turn. He is supposed to play his character and read in front of everyone an embarrassing moment from his life. He has stage fright and is horrified to do this, while in the meantime, Jared hits on his girlfriend Tabitha. The stage fright makes him feel horrible and he begins puking, while his girlfriend was climaxing. Meanwhile, the police were called to the train station because someone reported an incident on the incoming train. Officer Lorna goes inside, but there were no people in the front of the train. They must have moved towards the back. Upon going further, they are met with a shocking sight, where most of the passengers were slaughtered, and the ones still alive were now turned into the crossed. Wells brings everyone to his small farm, where they were raising pigs in order to slaughter them for meat. He remarks that pigs are one of the most intelligent species of animals. They are not even dirty. It's just that we keep them in uncomfortable and filthy conditions. He wants his students to sacrifice one of the pigs, starting with Wendy, who's a vegetarian. However, she isn't one by choice. Her mother forced her to be one ever since she was a little girl, and she actually enjoys slaughtering the animal. The others take turns doing the same thing, all except Clooney, who's acting his role, behaving like a coward. Tabitha covers herself in pig blood and gets aroused by this, staring Wells right in the eyes. Nancy plays her part as well and takes a turn at the pig. She then covers herself in blood as well and kisses Tabitha. Later at dinner, Christos is forced to reveal why half of his body is covered in burn scars. Apparently, he did it to himself by painting half of his body in cooking oil and then setting it on fire. Clooney is disgusted with the entire thing and goes outside for a small break. The butler initiates a conversation and claims that Wells gets a kick out of controlling and manipulating people. What really turns him on is when one of them breaks character and sooner or later someone always breaks. He's seen people taken out of here in straitjackets. There have even been suicides. He's been working here for years now. He's seen it all. Meanwhile, the town was slowly being overtaken by the crust, and Officer Lorna is forced to take out her colleagues to stay alive. She rushes to school to see if her niece was safe, but the place was already overrun. The kids were turned crossed and they mutilated some of the teachers. Luckily, her niece Philly was still alive and she is able to take her to safety. But during the escape, her best friend was grabbed by the crust. Lorna was unable to save both of them. She did her best and saved her niece, while the other girl was taken. Wells reads a passage from a book written by Edgar Allan Poe and asks the group to interpret the message behind it. Some people think he was using metaphors, while others strongly disagree. But all Clooney could think about was that Jared was having threesomes with his girlfriend and Nancy. He has had enough of listening to Wells speak, so he goes outside for a breath of fresh air. Nathan, the butler, is going into town for supplies and offers to give him a ride as well. While driving, Nathan tells him about Wells's history, claiming that his parents were traveling evangelists and he was raised to be very religious. But all that fell out the window when he saw his father making love with a transvestite nun while his mom was recording everyone on home video. Another time, he said he was born into a commune out in the Nevada desert, where he killed a man who was dealing drugs. Nobody knows for sure which one of these stories is actually true. Out of nowhere, a man falls onto their car from a bridge, but he didn't look normal. He had a red cross painted on his face. Before they could figure out what was going on, more cross came running at them, so they got back inside the car and drove off. They eventually arrive in town, but there is a mob of cross chasing them. Officer Lorna saves their asses, and they offer to take her back to the mansion. But she has unfinished business in town. She will come by later. But in the meantime, the two men decide to go back home, but not before driving into a couple of crossed on the way there. There was infected blood splattered everywhere, and Nathan accidentally infects himself by touching his wounds. It only takes a couple of seconds to turn, and he goes after Clooney, trying to cut his dick off and Tabitha with it. However, Clooney outsmarts him and manages to get him locked inside the freezer. He then goes to warn the others, but when he walks into the main hall, he finds the group having a big orgy amongst each other. Wells was fucking his girlfriend from behind, while Jared was doing her from the front. This whole scenario was set up just for him. They wanted to see his reaction. Clooney calls the entire scene a second-rate porn movie and gives everyone the finger before storming out of the room. Jared comes out and apologizes, claiming that none of this is personal and they are playing a game. Clooney decides to get back at him and lures him into the freezer, where the butler was locked away. Before he could figure out what was going on, Nathan attacks him and rips his face right off, using a hood meant for handling animal meat. Clooney knows that sooner or later the crust will come here looking for fresh meat, so he uses some gasoline to burn the entire bridge, which was the mansion's only accessible road. Meanwhile, Officer Lorna goes to check on her parents, but it was too late. Both of them were turned crossed and her mother was feeding her dad his own brains. Clooney wakes up in the middle of the night with his girlfriend giving him a blowjob. He thought their relationship was over, but she gets annoyed and claims she was only playing a role. He needs to get past the sex and think about transgressive art, which is all about breaking through limits of taboo and censorship. He doesn't really buy it, but before they could talk further, Wells walks in on them and accuses him of burning down the bridge. He also wanted to know what happened to his butler, and Clooney takes him to the freezer. Jared's body was dismembered on the floor, but there was no sign of Nathan. Out of nowhere, he comes running towards them, but Clooney locks the door once again, trapping them both inside. But Wells uses his cane to defend himself, which had a small dagger hidden inside. Luckily for him, Tabitha comes and opens the door, setting him free before Nathan got to him. They are able to close the door once again, but not before chopping off his right hand. Clooney was locked inside the cellar, which was a private torture chamber, fully equipped and escape-proof. He kept one of Nathan's fingers and plans to use it to infect Wells at the first chance he gets. The group eventually agrees to set him free. His story checks out. They were able to use the internet and found out there is some kind of epidemic driving people crazy. Wells doesn't fully trust him. He did try to kill him earlier, but he understands. He claims the only reason he pushed him so hard is because when Clooney wrote that piece about himself and sent it to him, it reminded him of when he was his age. He was exactly the same. Weak, ineffectual, a spineless, pathetic worm, until someone pushed him too far and the worm turned into him. Burning down the bridge was a good idea. The river had a strong current and the crossed were being swept away. However, they kept coming and driving cars into the water, eventually forming a bridge out of cars. This allows them to cross the water and get onto the island where the mansion was located. Officer Lorna and her niece arrive as well, but the place was crawling with crust. She attacks two of them and wants to steal their police car, but the bigger one falls on top of her. The infected blood only took a few seconds to get in her bloodstream and turn her as well. Billy picks up a gun and is forced to shoot her aunt, the only living person who still cares about her. The group barricaded themselves inside the mansion, while the Crossed came in waves toward them. Eventually, the mansion is overrun, and everything turns to chaos as the group loses control. Tabitha goes into the cellar to set her boyfriend free, but he already used Nathan's finger to turn himself into a Crossed. He wants to do the same to her and runs after her, but she accidentally trips on the stairs and knocks herself unconscious. The Crossed had finally surrounded Wells, and there was no way of escaping anymore, when Clooney comes out holding his girlfriend's head in his arms. In the end, his body was completely dismembered, while the others were holding his limbs as trophies. The story now jumps somewhere else, to the Los Angeles County Probation Department, right after the outbreak began. Serena Long is an officer there, but she is now trapped inside her office while the Crossed run rampant on the streets. She used to love a man named Matthias Witniak, but he was now infected with whatever the others have, and was now a Crossed. Serena has faith that Matthias will find her amidst all this chaos, even though this is literally the end of the world. Matthias is a very dangerous criminal, accused of dealing and selling drugs, using drugs, and also charges of assault, even though he claims innocence. He was released on bail, under a 6 to 6 curfew till the trial, and given an ankle tag. Serena was tasked with keeping an eye on him and making sure he doesn't run away. Matthias wanders the dangerous streets of Los Angeles while Serena recounts some of his worst crimes. One night he missed curfew and wandered off to a bar to have some drinks. Serena followed him down there and wanted to arrest him, but instead they end up having a couple of drinks. She was kinda bored and lonely, and it's been a while since she spent time with another man. They hit it off, and the two of them end the night by making passionate love. In the present, he wanders the streets going somewhere, while Serena tracks his location by watching the GPS. He eventually arrives at the county probation offices, but the place was in complete chaos. A group of Crossed children were guarding the entrance to the building, while also torturing a desperate woman. Matthias had a hard life ever since he was born. His mom died when he was 2, and his father kept him dosed on whatever shit he could find. His father would alternate between raping and beating him, so he killed him when he was just 14 years old. He told her the truth about his past the first night they made love, how he got involved with the mob after killing his dad. He liked to read though, and often quoted famous poem writers such as Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. Despite all of his shortcomings and flaws, he was the best man she had ever known. And after 2 months of going out, she was completely in love. Eventually, the mob found out about their relationship and ordered him to kill Serena, or they would kill him. In the present, Matthias goes through the prison section, trying to get to her office. But this is one of the most dangerous places here, and someone attacks him out of nowhere, zapping him with a taser. Serena can hear people screaming in agony outside, but she can't do anything about it besides hide in her office. She sees Matthias getting closer and closer and decides to leave the office, but she's much too scared now. The man he was fighting used to work for the mob as well. He was the boss's right hand and he had a grudge against Matthias. After falling in love with Serena, he wanted to quit working for them, but they didn't allow him, calling him a fool for falling for a cop. He eventually wins the fight against his attacker and goes up the stairs toward her office. She remembers the last time they saw each other, right after he told the mob he wanted to quit. He wanted the two of them to run away together, claiming he has enough money for both of them to live in luxury. She began crying because even though she loved him, she couldn't run away with him. He's a criminal and she's a cop. They are so different that their relationship wouldn't last, but that was just a lie. There was another reason, a dark one. Ever since she put a tracker on him, she's been using him to track his every move. He also told her secrets about the mob, which allowed them to build a case against them. They were tracking him to get to his boss all this time. Matthias finds her office, but Serena was nowhere to be seen. She had run into another office trying to hide from him. She doesn't know how much he remembers about her betrayal now that he has a cross on his face. Will he remember the heartbreak? When she told him the truth, he tied her hands behind her back, bent her over the table, and raped her from behind. He was furious, but deep down he still loved her and felt bad about doing that to her. After leaving the department, that's when he got attacked by a crossed woman, and he was turned into one of them. Matthias eventually finds her in the evidence locker, but she claims she loved him, and he did this to himself. She puts the gun in her mouth and blows her own brains out, ending her suffering. Matthias finds a lot of drugs hidden there and eats as much of it as he can. He then goes back outside and lets loose, doing what the crossed do best. The next story begins with two people making love on the bed. His name is Frank, while her name is Kathy. At least that's what she told him. In reality, it's Amanda. Frank is a good guy, traveling with his young son, Frankie. They met Amanda a couple of weeks ago when they helped her escape from a tight spot. She was cornered with no way of getting away, but Frank helped her cross to another building. Amanda ran into a psychopath named Lore some time ago, which left her scarred, both mentally and physically. She's been traveling with Frank and his son ever since, and she's thankful by letting Frank make love to her. In order to escape from Lore, she had to mutilate herself and cut her own hand. She hasn't trusted anyone ever since, which includes Frank, who she thinks will eventually turn on her. She kills him in his sleep by slicing his throat and then abandons little Frankie to survive on his own. She spends the next couple of days on her own until she runs into Michael, a random guy who broke his ankle by falling into a trap. She helps him get out, but chooses to leave him behind because she doesn't want to get attached to anyone. She goes into a nearby town and runs into a cowboy who calls himself Danger Montana. Montana saves her by killing a Crost and claims they need to leave before more of them show up. The streets are quickly overrun with them, and they are forced to hide inside a bar. Amanda decides to set the place on fire, trying to cover their tracks. But instead of running on the roof, they head into the basement. While the Crost run rampant on the streets, Montana offers to bring her back to his hideout, claiming it's safe there and they have plenty of food. She agrees and follows him through some sewers, arriving in an underground hideout that was locked from the inside. Montana introduces her to two of his friends, Killjoy, a man who is pretending to be a king's knight, and Great Kong, who thinks he is a Neanderthal. Frankie was left alone after Amanda killed his father, and sadly, he was captured by the Crost. He was turned into one of them, but their leader was crazier than all of them, and he wanted to torture him. When he was done, all of them took turns and ate Frankie alive, each choosing a body part and devouring it. Back in the hideout, Montana brought Amanda there in hopes that they would all take turns making love with her, but Great Kong doesn't waste any time and hits on her. She panics and draws her gun on him, threatening to kill him if he doesn't back down. In the end, they strap her in chains and tie her down, making her their prisoner. Montana claims the only reason she's still alive is because she's a woman. They offer her food and protection, and in exchange, they want her to take her clothes off. Killjoy is a noble knight and intervenes, stopping the two men from violating her. He claims he wants to take the first turn and demands to take her back to the safety of his chamber. Meanwhile, the Crost were still looking for them, and one of them finds the entrance to the sewers. Killjoy's room was decorated like a true knight's bedroom. There were flags, weapons, and even armors on display. Amanda finally understands what's going on here and realizes that these guys are completely crazy. They each choose a personality and live their lives according to that identity. She decides to play along. At least Killjoy was nice to her and treated her like a lady, even though she has other goals in mind. Suddenly they hear noises coming from the nearby sewers. It was the Crost, who were still searching for them. The Crost don't give up, not when they know that someone is near. They didn't find them, and they moved somewhere else. So the group decides to have dinner. This is the best meal she had in months, and even though it was probably some rat, it tasted delicious. Killjoy takes her back to his room for round 2, and this time she enjoyed it a bit more, learning to play her role as a damsel in distress. Out of nowhere, someone grabs her by the hair and slams her on the ground. It was one of Killjoy's alternate personalities, his wife, who accuses her of sleeping with her husband. She straps Amanda to a chair and calls her a accusing her of seducing her husband. The other guys know what was going on and ask him to open the door, calling her Maggie. She and Montana also had an affair, and he claims he loves her and asks her to open the door. While he was keeping her busy, Great Kong tries to untie Amanda and set her free, but Maggie accuses them of tricking her. Montana tries to stop her, but she was still a man after all and fights back, freeing herself. The battle continues and Maggie picks up a spear and hits Montana over the head. She then throws it towards Amanda, but Kong gets in the way and gets impaled, prompting him to scream in agony. Killjoy switches back from his Maggie personality and checks on his friend's health. The fantasy does have limits. Ultimately, these three men need each other. Ultimately, they're a family. Amanda steals the gun from Montana and threatens them, claiming she wants to leave because if she stays here one way or another, she's getting fucked. One of the Crost was still in the sewers and heard Kong scream, so he knows they are hiding here somewhere. Amanda offers to leave the hideout and draw the Crost away from there, and Killjoy agrees to let her leave. She goes outside and sees a bunch of them sneaking inside the sewers, but instead of running and saving herself, she shoots one of them in the neck. This triggers a stampede, and they all chase after her. If she stops, she's dead. She doesn't even have time to think. One of them jumps her from behind the corner and punches her in the face. Just as she was about to be dragged away, someone shoots him in the face. It was Montana who came to help. Every Crost in the area was alerted to their presence and was chasing after them, while the leader was feeding on one of his victims. They managed to find an abandoned house, so they hid inside. But to cope with the situation, Montana changed his personality into a working man who got laid off from the plant. She decides to play along, and just like that, the horror world went away. She is now married with 2 kids and a garden. They didn't leave this house for the next couple of weeks, and life has never been better. They spent most of the days pretending like they are a married couple, making love on the kitchen counter and eating whatever they could find, which was usually cooked rats. They played the roles to perfection. They made up conversations and backstories about their friends and family, and even pretended to talk on a broken phone. Montana treated her like a queen. They made love on the bed and even made a list of names for their children. One day they ran out of food, so Montana left to find something to eat, leaving Amanda all alone. She made crazy scenarios in her mind, picturing herself living on the moon and fighting giant monsters. The Crossed were still around, and she witnessed some of the horrors from the safety of her window. She knows she is half crazy, but what if she is full crazy just like Harold Laura used to be? Montana eventually returns, but he was only able to find a couple of puppies. Amanda was ecstatic and wanted to cook them into a delicious meal, but Montana had other ideas. Before they could do anything, the Crossed were getting closer to their home, and they were in danger of getting caught. Montana goes outside to lure them away, trying to keep his fake wife safe, and he even shoots the leader in the knee. They eventually corner him from every side, and time was running out for him. Left without a choice, he puts the gun barrel in his mouth and blows his brains out. Amanda stays put for another week just to make sure it was safe to leave the house, and then she goes outside. But the only thing she was able to find was his hat. Eventually, she leaves this cursed town and wanders back into the forest, but hears someone calling her name. It was Michael, the guy she met a couple of weeks ago when he fell and broke his ankle inside a trap. She takes out her machete, but it wasn't because she wanted to help him. She had other intentions in mind. She killed him and then took his body back to the hideout, where Killjoy and Kong were waiting. Amanda finally realizes she isn't just half crazy anymore. She is full crazy and chooses to live together with these guys. The next story involves 4 British soldiers headed on a special mission. Taff, Paddy, Jock, and Harry. They were following the coastline heading north, trying to avoid London as much as possible and other big crowded places. They spot a herd of Crossed walking through the fields, and even though they were well armed, they wanted to avoid them to save ammo. However, in front of them, hidden behind a wall of rocks, is a guy and several children who were disguising themselves to look Crossed in order to trick them. Harry knows that this isn't going to work. They've seen it many times in the past 5 years, and it always fails. The soldiers decide to get involved and get in between the children and the Crossed. They are well trained and properly equipped, especially Jock, who uses his automatic machine gun to dismember the monsters. Harry was pissed at the man for putting the children in danger and calls him an imbecile. 2 Crossed were missing, but the group finds them hiding in a ditch, doing unholy things to each other. Jock loves children and wants to strangle the man, but he was scaring the kids, so he backs down. The man's name is Dennis Kingston, and he is a priest. They were part of a bigger group who were hiding in his church, but the people wanted to kick the kids out because they were making too much noise and attracting the Crossed. He didn't want to abandon them, so he chose to leave together with them. The soldiers are heading towards the Ministry of Defense's primary biological and chemical warfare center, located in Wiltshire, about 150 miles west from there. They want to blow up the entire place and release into the atmosphere every virus known to man. The journey takes them to the city of Brighton, but Father Dennis can't believe what he is seeing. The Crossed had gathered all of the normal people and skinned them alive, using their skins to cover the entire docks. Harry calls it art. He's amazed at how creative the Crossed can be when it comes down to brutality. At night, the kids were sleeping like babies, while the adults kept watch and talked about their new life. Harry claims his team has seen quite a bit of country since it all started. There are numerous groups of survivors, some quite large, some very well organized. Many of them even use radio communications to stay in touch. They intend to broadcast a warning on all channels before releasing the agents into the atmosphere. Those that hear the message can take cover, maybe head for the offshore islands or high ground. If the Crossed die, the epidemic that kills them runs its course, then the land is clean. Father Dennis is worried about all the people that are gonna get killed as well, innocent people. Harry claims that the great population of Britain has dropped around 95% from over 60 million, and 95% are not human anymore. They need to do something, or humanity will be wiped out, but Father Dennis thinks he's condemning people to death. In the morning, the father brings up religion and offers a Bible to him, but Harry isn't interested. He doesn't believe in God and thinks this whole religion thing is a scam. He reminds Father of some of the atrocities that were done in the name of religion. When the outbreak began, Harry was returning home to his wife and 2 children. But the wife said they were Crossed outside the house. She starts running out the back, holding their youngest baby, while the oldest son runs behind. Harry arrives in time, but he was still far away, so he provides fire cover trying to keep them safe. Sadly, the wife tripped on some rocks and fell on the ground, allowing the Crossed to catch her from behind. To spare her from being humiliated and Harry shot his own family before the Crossed had a chance to do anything. He's been living with his sins ever since, and doesn't need a priest to hear his confession. After walking for a few more days, the group finally finds a boat that was still intact. Getting down from the hills isn't going to be easy, because the place is crawling with Crost. The soldiers stand their ground and defend the kids as the Crost charge towards them. There were tens of them, but the soldiers knew what's at stake and used everything at their disposal to take them out. Jock runs out of bullets and reloading the machine gun takes quite some time. Harry had given Father Dennis a gun and told him to kill the kids and then himself if they are killed in battle. Death is nothing compared to what those monsters will do to them. Luckily, Jock reloads just in time and he continues firing at the monsters who had nearly overrun them. The hills are covered in piles of dead bodies, but none of them passed through. What remains now is to finish off the injured ones. Father Dennis will take the boat and the kids and head towards one of the Channel Islands, maybe Alderney's Island, and keep them safe. At night time, Harry tells the father that every one of his soldiers agreed with the mission, mostly because the Cross depravity is limitless. They're never gonna change, and given their numbers, they're unlikely to die out before reducing the human population to unsustainable levels. The father fell asleep on the table and the kids woke him up in the morning. The soldiers were already gone, but they left them a bag filled with supplies, but the father's Bible was missing. Harry had taken it with him. The road to the biological center was filled with destruction and chaos, thousands of cars abandoned on the highway, and dead bodies everywhere. The place was abandoned, but there are Crossed lurking everywhere. Some of them sneak up from behind and their cover was gonna get blown soon. The only way into the building is by going in hot, guns blazing. The entire courtyard erupts in chaos as the Crossed are alerted to their location. But luckily, Harry knows a secret entrance inside. Tens, if not hundreds, of Crossed swarm in on them, but they managed to get inside in the last second. There was nobody left alive inside, but the place was just as described. There are thousands of viruses stored here, one more deadly than the other. They just needed to figure out a way to release it. Everyone knew that once they did this, there was no escaping it. This was a suicide mission. But now that they are faced with the decision, it suddenly doesn't feel so easy anymore. What they are doing is genocide, and it's not an easy decision to take, so the group reconsiders it. Taff suggests to just leave and do nothing. Hopefully the winter's starvation will take out most of the Crossed, and the lands will be cleansed. Jock wants to seal the main shaft with C4 and blow it up so the Crossed can't get to it, and then go outside and kill as many of them as they can. Everyone agrees, and decides to go back outside and follow through with the plan. But Harry is riddled with thoughts. They've been through so many fights together, Paddy, Jock, and Taff. They've never let Harry down, and he loves them too much to see them torn apart, defiled, and reborn again as demons. He takes his gun and blows their heads off from behind, choosing to kill his friends rather than have them turned into the Crossed. He then continues with the plan. He plants C4 on the elevator shaft to seal the entrance and goes outside to kill as many of them as he can. In mere seconds, he is overrun from every direction and he accepts his fate. This is the end for him and his crew. Oliver is an anthropologist, and he writes in his journal everything he was able to observe about the Crossed and how they behave. He and a couple of other people have been able to survive by hiding inside an apartment building and keeping quiet. When the outbreak began, Oliver saw a man getting out of a car crash, but because he had blood on his forehead, the Crossed didn't attack him, at least not until he wiped it himself. The group replicated this, and thanks to Oliver, they were able to escape a bookshop where they first barricaded themselves. Oliver noticed that one of the Crossed appeared to be smarter than the others. He named him Smokey. He was big and strong, and even though he enjoyed inflicting pain just like the others, he's more sophisticated about it. He wants prey that will scream, and he puts more thought into finding it, more consideration of how to make his victims last longer, and most significantly, he is capable of delaying gratification. During the night, Tina, one of the women of the group, seduces Oliver into having sex with her. After Alan, the police officer, he was the second leader of the group with extensive knowledge of the Crossed. The group decides to leave the city and head to Wyoming. Because it's the least populated state and it's gonna get cold soon, the Crossed will most likely die during winter. Before leaving, however, they need plenty of supplies, so the group splits into 3 teams. Oliver and Tina explore an abandoned shopping center, but Tina tries to convince him to abandon the others and run together. She even puts on a sexy dress and tries seducing him further. Oliver is just a man after all. However, they aren't alone for long because the Crossed find and attack them. Tina is the first to be taken and abused, but before they could do the same to Oliver, he begs for his life, claiming that if they let him live, he can help them find more victims. Smokey is intrigued and orders the others to back off while he speaks. Smokey agrees to let him live, and in exchange, he goes back to the streets and finds one of the other groups. They ambush them in the dark alleys, but Oliver claims he didn't have a choice. He's just trying to survive. Pat is an old man with plenty of hunting experience, and he refuses to let himself be taken alive. He takes his own life and the life of his grandson before the Crossed could do anything. This pisses off Smokey, who wanted to torture them longer, but Oliver promises there is another group, and he will make sure they won't kill each other. The Crossed care about one thing, and one thing only, inflicting pain as much as possible in the most cruel ways imaginable. Oliver has never seen a Crossed like Smokey. He's seen him take steps aimed at basic survival, eating, minimal washing, protection from the elements. He basically understands that extending his life affords him more opportunities to hunt. Were it not for Smokey's protection, Oliver would die in unbearable agony from the others. He eventually takes them to the remaining group members, and Smokey quickly takes out the strongest guy. He then takes prisoner one of the women, Eve, who immediately knew that Oliver betrayed them. Smokey takes off her clothes and completely undresses her, but instead of letting the other Crossed abuse her, he asks Oliver to her. She mocked him the entire time, calling him weak and pathetic, claiming they always knew he would be trouble for the group. Eventually, Smokey gives her a kiss, turning her into one of them. She wanted to kill Oliver for what he did, but Smokey didn't allow it. Instead, she had to take her anger on someone else. He then continues to work for them, luring more people and creating an ambush for the Crossed to attack them. Oliver knew there was no escape anymore. There is no hope. There is only the Crossed and him, their Judas goat. Eventually, Oliver was responsible for the slaughter and/or infection of roughly 200 people, the latest being a survivalist militia who was foolish enough to trust him. Ever since this whole thing started, he's always been a survivor, doing anything he could to stay alive. He first lived with Colin, his assistant, a sensitive soul, who, after hours of watching all manner of atrocities through the window, started to lose his mind. He volunteered at the zoo and wanted to go there and let the animals out, and Oliver pushed him to follow through on this stupid idea. He never saw Colin again, but he knew he had succeeded when he saw wild animals attacking the Crossed. That's when he realized that this virus only affects humans and not animals. He'd spent 2 days gaining the trust of the militia, promising to lead them to his stash of food, weapons, and medicine. He listened to most of their standard racist conspiracy theories, including one story about 2 pregnant Crossed women who were discussing where to go and why intelligently. Did they get pregnant before they turned Crossed, or were they pregnant before? If there are more like Smokey, even a few, and they can reproduce, that could mean the end of humanity. He continued to spend time with them, watching them commit atrocities, and wondered what would happen when there are no more uninfected to prey on. The obvious conclusion is that they'll turn on each other. If intelligent Crossed organize, if they lead their fellows as Smokey leads his group, how long before they get access to nukes and annihilate the entire planet? Oliver wakes up in the middle of the night and catches Smokey reading his journal. He had no clue if he even understood any of it, but eventually he gave it back and left him be. He tells him about a place called Cheyenne Mountain, which is part of NORAD, a bunker created to assure the continuity of the government in case of war. He wants to lead Smokey there and hope that there are enough soldiers to wipe them out, but in order to take the bunker, they need a lot more Crossed. Smokey and his group entered Denver and fought the local gangs, showing dominance and convincing the other Crossed to follow him. They arrive at the entrance to the bunker and Oliver goes inside first. He lies to the soldiers and claims he only wants to be somewhere safe, and they agree to open the doors. As soon as they do that, the Crossed storm inside and attack whoever was not turned. The attack catches the humans by surprise and they couldn't mount a defense. Oliver acknowledges that for the sake of whatever future the Earth might have, he needs to kill Smokey before he gets access to nukes and destroys the entire planet. While everyone else was busy causing chaos, he sneaks inside the command center and finds data there dating back to day 1 of the outbreak from all around the world. Eve sneaks up behind him and attacks him, wanting to settle the score, but he was able to steal the gun off a soldier and shoots her point blank. He lights the entire place on fire and shoots whatever computers were still working. Smokey appears out of nowhere and attacks him, demanding to know what kind of secrets he was trying to destroy. He was very curious and begs Oliver to tell him the truth, but he couldn't. Instead, he gives him a kiss. In just a few seconds, he turns into a Crossed himself and loses any ability to think and speak coherently. In the end, Smokey doesn't need him anymore, so he breaks his neck and leaves him to burn. The last chance to keep the country together was now up in flames, and Smokey leaves this place unharmed. He breaks inside an abandoned car and looks over a map, picking his next destination. Somewhere else, Amanda, who we've seen in an earlier story, picks a new personality for herself, claiming she is the princess warrior of the planet Beta X9. She lives together with 2 other crazy men, Killweather, who thinks he is a piece of candy, and Dr. Kong, who thinks he is a science doctor. They often go outside to hunt, and today it's her turn to do it. She finds a couple living alone in an abandoned home, making passionate love, meaning they are a couple and they love each other. She plans to attack them and kill them in their sleep, planning to eat them later at the hideout. But before she could enact her plan, she sees a group of tribal crossed heading towards the house. She decides to hide and stay hidden until they leave, so she sneaks in the basement and finds a hiding spot. She could hear the couple screaming as the crossed were mutilating them. The blood was dripping through the floors, covering her body. The man was turned into a crossed, but the woman was still human. They wanted to torture her further. After dealing with the man, the others attacked the woman and cut her body into pieces. The leader was disguised as a Catholic cardinal, claiming he was doing God's work and cleansing the earth of sinners. When the outbreak began, she survived together with 3 other friends, but a psychopath by the name of Laura Harold and murdered all of them. She's been haunted by that psychopath ever since, which led to her eventually losing her mind and going crazy herself. She spends the next couple of days trapped inside the hideout, watching the crossed bring someone else from outside. It was Great Kong, one of the people she'd been living with. But that's not all. Killweather was also captured and turned into a crossed. Amanda falls asleep in her hiding spot and dreams about her friends who were brutally killed by Laura. She wakes up wondering if she was talking in her sleep, afraid that the crossed might have heard her. The basement looks abandoned and most of the victims were dead, including Dr. Kong. She remembers what happened to Killweather, who got into an argument with some of the religious crossed. They held him down and then tortured him with a machete. When they were done, they burned his wounds and stuck an empty pen casing inside him. She wants to get out and check on Dr. Kong, but she's much too scared and reconsiders it. Outside, a man is being chased by a couple of crossed nuns who want to cut off his penis. He runs inside the house and goes into the basement, but the nuns were right behind him. Eventually, the nuns turn on each other, accusing themselves of being. Amanda thinks this man is one of them and drops a piece of rock on his head. The man dies on the spot, but Amanda regrets her actions upon realizing that the man was normal. Mr. Lore appears as a vision and talks to her, congratulating her on her kill and asking her to mutilate the body. The man had a radio on him and his friends were calling to check if he was alright. Amanda accuses the crossed of killing him, but she knows what really happened. Before his friends get there, she has to make sure the killing looks like it was done by the crossed, so she mutilates the corpse in the worst kinds of ways. Amanda tells a nice lie, claiming their friend Vic was killed by a group of crossed, while she witnessed the entire thing from her hiding spot. Tammy says they did the same thing to another friend of theirs 3 weeks ago. Mike and John want to lure the crossed down south while the 2 girls run north, but Amanda doesn't like this idea. She thinks it's better to stay put and just wait until they leave. In the end, she agrees to join their group and together they abandon this house forever. Mike is the leader of the group and somehow she wants to convince him to call this off and turn back, but she needs to watch for Tammy because she's been in the catbird seat with these 2 boys. During the night, she hits on John, who was keeping first watch, and gets him to cuddle with her. She falls asleep and dreams about Killweather fighting her, disguised in his Candyman persona. Mike wakes her up because she was talking in her sleep, and the 2 of them begin talking. He doesn't like her idea of just staying put and hiding. He thinks that surviving isn't everything, that the way you live matters as well. Amanda's sure that he's completely suicidal and will likely get the group killed, so she plans to take him out. She uses her charms and seduces him, and the 2 of them make love on the ground. She makes him bite on a piece of wood, but it was only because she didn't want him to scream as she was slicing his throat. She then mutilates his body to make it seem like the cross did it, cutting away body parts including his penis. She even makes a cross on his forehead using his blood, but she gets covered in blood as well and goes to clean herself. She goes back and wakes the others, lying that the crossed dragged Mike into the forest and killed him. She didn't do a very good job at cleaning her clothes because she still had blood on her. So she runs towards Mike and picks him up, claiming she found his body, and using this as an excuse for the blood on her clothes. However, when John and Tammy find her, they see her covered in blood and assume she was infected as well, so they attack her. Amanda wakes up several hours later inside a barn, with Tammy watching over her. They thought she turned into a crossed, but they quickly realized she wasn't infected, so they brought her here. But in all the agitation, they forgot to check if Mike was still alive, so John went back to find his body. Lore appears and talks to her once again, spreading more lies to confuse her even further. He claims that when John finds Mike's body, he's gonna realize he wasn't killed by the crossed and blame her instead. Lore convinces her that the only way to save herself is to ambush John on his way back and kill him. She takes a hook that was hanging on the wall and tells Tammy she's going outside to take a dump. She waited for several minutes, learning to be quiet and pay attention to even the smallest of sounds. Suddenly, she sees John running desperately through the forest and thinks he found out the truth about her. She attacks him from the back and stabs his head with the hook, instantly killing him. The reason he was running desperately is because the religious crossed was chasing after him and now they spotted her too. She and Tammy barely make it out into one of the boats, while the crossed chase them in the water. Both girls take turns firing towards them, but they eventually escape into the safety of the waters. Tammy notices that Amanda was carrying John's weapon and asks how she got it. Again, she panics and thinks her cover is blown, so she hits her over the head, breaking her teeth. The girls get into a struggle and fight, but Amanda had the upper hand and she's able to kill Tammy by stabbing her with one of the paddles. She then returns to shore and runs back to the same house where she was hiding for a couple of weeks. Laurie talks to her, claiming that she killed all these people not only to save herself, but also because deep down she enjoyed it. Amanda ignores him and crawls back into her hiding spot and says she's never getting out. The next story involves two bikers, a hippie by the name of Frank and a racist son of a bitch named Errol. Both of them have a death wish, but before that they need to finish something, so they are heading to San Diego, killing all the Crosts that come their way. Errol is a tough son of a bitch, and he even plays the bait while Frank sets up a trap. They lure a bunch of Crost onto a puddle of gasoline and then light it on fire, watching the Crost burn alive in agony. Frank used to have a family, but he got by selling all kinds of drugs to people. Once, he met a scientist who made a new kind of drug, one so powerful that it transported him beyond reality. It was like nothing he had ever tried in his life. Errol used to be in a gang, who usually stayed at the roadhouse outside Amarillo. One day, Zeke the Geek and his crew, a rival biker gang, were all turned Crossed and they came to the roadhouse. After fighting and killing most of his gang, they turned the survivors into Crossed as well, so Errol is on a suicide mission to avenge them. On the road, they meet a Mexican woman named Elena, who was running from her ex-husband, a very evil man who she calls Death. Errol calls her because she was pregnant, but Frank offers to give her a lift. She wants to go west, to the Isla Montague near the border of Mexicali, where most of her family is living. She joins their small gang and together they ride until they come across a small town. Its people surround them from every direction, and they were dangerous and well armed. The leader, a reverend armed with an automatic machine gun, comes out and says this is the end of times. He was being nice and offers them something to eat, claiming they've been surviving here ever since the outbreak began. But there was something in their food and both of them began to lose consciousness and fall asleep. When they wake up, Errol was being taken inside a church tower, but his hands were tied behind his back. His friend Frank was tied to a cross in the middle of a canyon, with lots of explosives strapped to his body. The Reverend uses human bait in order to draw out the cross and take them out one by one. The pole is covered in oil, which makes it nearly impossible to climb and get to the bait. If they come in greater numbers, they will eventually be able to get to him and get him down. But that's when they plan to blow him up using the C4. They've been doing this to keep the Crossed away from the town and take out entire groups at once. Some men take Errol and drag him down to wait his turn, like his friend, but Elena comes to help him. She unties his hands and he easily takes out the two men. He then goes back up in the tower and ambushes the Reverend, asking him to lure the Crossed to their location and away from Frank. As the people were sleeping in the church downstairs, a group of Crossed attacked them and all hell breaks loose. Eventually the people manage to kill all of them, but they were no match for Errol, who takes them out with ease. He then unties his friend from the cross and puts the Reverend in his place, strapping plenty of explosives to his body. The trio go back on the road and Frank remembers what happened to his family. He blames himself for their death, claiming he doesn't want to die, but he needs to, in order to be with his family once again. Suddenly, a black Mercedes comes out of nowhere and tries to run them over. The car was bulletproof and they couldn't take out the driver, but luckily Frank is a good shot and he takes out the tires, allowing the group to make a run for it. They eventually arrive at a bar in the middle of nowhere, where Ruffalo, Zeke's second in command, was being a corpse. Errol puts on a helmet and pretends to be a Crossed as well, which fools Ruffalo into dropping his guard long enough for him to smash his body in half. They leave his body in a puddle of blood while Errol claims that revenge feels fucking sweet. Eventually the group gets to San Diego, their final destination, where Frank plans to search for the miracle drug that gets you high within seconds. He shows them the place where the chemist used to work, but the place was surrounded by Crossed. Errol creates a diversion, fooling the crazies into following a corpse riding his bike, and it worked. The place was full of cannabis plants which grew rampant everywhere, but what they were really after was a special drug that was stashed inside a cabinet. Errol takes it, but doesn't want to give it to Frank just yet, fearing that he might get high and die. They still have one final mission to accomplish, to find Zeke the Geek and take him out. Him and his gang of Crossed were still hanging out at the roadhouse, but there were just too many of them. Out of nowhere, the man that was after Elena finds them once again, and he holds them at gunpoint. Errol makes a move and jumps towards him, but he gets shot in the chest. Even so, he was still strong enough and manages to pin the man to the ground and bite his Adam's apple right off. The gunshots were loud enough for the Crossed to be alerted, and the gang rushes towards them. Frank was scared shitless, so he hides inside an abandoned car, while Errol asks Elena to get the hell out of there. He stays behind and wants to kill as many of them as he can, but before they get to him, he takes a sip of the miracle drug. Just as Frank said, it only takes a few seconds for the drug to take effect, and Errol is transported into another world. He imagines himself surrounded by unicorns, mermaids, and leprechauns and doesn't even know what is happening to him. The Crossed jump him and butcher his body, dismembering him into pieces and leaving him to rot on the ground. After seeing his friend butchered like that, Frank decides to avenge him and finish his mission of killing Zeke the Geek. He makes a cross on his forehead using a blunt and then goes down to the roadhouse. He pretends to be one of them and fools all of them, allowing him to get close enough to backstab Zeke in the back. He kills him, but the other Crossed were now alerted to his presence and they jump him from all sides. In the end, only Elena is left alive as she continues her journey to meet her family down south. The next story begins in Japan on day 0 of the Crossed outbreak in the beautiful city of Kojason, renowned for its many Buddhist monasteries. A group of 3 friends came to visit this beautiful place, but Ryan couldn't keep his hands off his girlfriend, Natalie. Cody was pissed that his friends weren't paying attention and weren't taking the experience seriously. Suddenly, one of the men there begins convulsing and acting strange, but the monks jump to his aid, trying to see what was wrong with him. Cody decides to go on his own and leaves his friends to make out, claiming he wants to check out the village on his own. The man from earlier had actually turned crossed, and he attacked the monks, turning them as well. Cody finds a coffee shop and starts a conversation with the owner, a beautiful woman who lived in the States for a while. After coming back to Japan, she adopted the Western ideology and turned her husband's art shop into a coffee shop. Her daughter's name is Emiko. She's an artist just like her father who draws manga. Cody's friends find an old graveyard and decide to have sex. Graveyards really turn Natalie on and she immediately takes her clothes off. Before they could start anything, Ryan sees a monk behind one of the graveyards and checks to see what he was doing. The man was having sex with the severed head of a woman, and Ryan is able to take a few pictures of the disgusting act. They quickly realize that the entire graveyard was overrun with the Crossed, who are defiling and mutilating anything they could get their hands on. They are eventually able to escape, but Natalie didn't have any time to put her pants on and she was running half naked. Emiko is talking to one of her friends about her recent manga, about a violator who was kidnapped by the Gore Angels, a group of crime-fighting women who punish violators. Ryan and Natalie run for their lives and come across another couple who were exploring the village. They gave Natalie a pair of shorts, but they didn't believe them when they said they were being chased by crazy people. The monks jumped them and attacked the couple, and they were helpless to defend themselves. The monks are skilled warriors, and now as Crossed they are even more deadly and savage. The owner of the coffee shop has a daughter named Emiko, who knows Cody from when she lived in the States. He came here specifically to see her again, because she ran from the States without even saying goodbye. Something horrible happened to her. She was violated by a couple of men, and it reflected in her manga drawings. Apparently, someone filmed her having sex with a couple of guys from the campus, but she claims she was violated and feels very ashamed. The person who recorded the video and posted it online is his friend, Ryan. He and Natalia come running inside the coffee shop, asking the owner if she'd seen their friend. The mother mentions her daughter, Emiko, which Ryan recognizes, but before they could do anything, the Crossed throw a severed head through the window. The Crossed threatened to break inside, and one of them walked around with a belt created from severed penises. The scene outside was even more horrible as the madness overtook this quiet little village. But luckily, not all was lost. Emiko's father used to be a samurai, and he still had his trusted sword, which he uses to take out a few of the infected. Cody and Emiko finally realize what was happening outside, but the scene is too gruesome to even describe. Everyone gathers in one of the rooms, including the 3 friends and Emiko's family. While everyone was busy talking, the father opens his daughter's laptop and sees a porn video posted online of her being violated by a couple of guys. Natalie recognizes Emiko from the video and compliments her, claiming she would have loved to be the one in the video, but she had no idea it was her. The man who started the outbreak in the village wanders the streets, searching for something, as if he could hear voices talking to him. He finds the building and climbs its walls, trying to get to the top floor, where he sees the group talking inside one of the rooms. The dad brings the laptop and demands answers. He wants to know what she did while she was away in America. He takes out his sword and threatens to cut Ryan's throat if he doesn't get an explanation soon. The father is an old school kind of guy. He believes in honor, but there is no moral order left in the world. Not even in Japan, there is only punishment. The Crossed sitting outside the window witnesses the entire scene. He has an injury on his forehead which opened his mind, allowing him to see the truth. For 3 decades, the chemist Estrada has been traveling the hippie trail, seeking enlightenment in this tiny village. Earlier today, he came across a couple of Crossed who were visiting a woman on the trail. One of them gets close and gives him a kiss, infecting him with the Crossed virus, but he didn't immediately change into one of them. Instead, he made it all the way into the village where he attended a ceremony, the same one that Cody, Ryan, and Natalie attended. His skull was penetrated by one of the monks, and he saw the light. He observed the mayhem that he brought to the village and he saw that it was good. Now, having achieved enlightenment, he wants nothing more than to share it with his fellow man. Emiko tells her father everything that happened. She went to a party where Cody was supposed to meet her, but he never showed up because he got mugged the same night. One of the guys hit on her and gave her something to drink, but there must have been something inside because she began feeling sick and she eventually passed out. She woke up several minutes later in one of the rooms, but a couple of guys were taking advantage of her while Ryan was recording. Ryan claims they didn't spike her drink and that she did everything willingly, but the father attacks him, wanting to end him on the spot. His girlfriend turns on him as well. She had no idea what a piece of shit he really was. They eventually tie him to a chair and let Emiko decide his punishment. She deserves to choose what happens to him. She shows him her manga about the gore angels who kidnapped a later, cut off his penis, and then fed it to him. She wants to do the same and videotape the entire scene, just like he did with her during the party. She opens her laptop and talks to her friend once again, who claims that things are bad all over the country, including Tokyo, which has been overrun by the Crossed. Emiko decides to spare Ryan, claiming she's not like him, and then goes into the other room, but something was wrong. The man that started the infection in the village had climbed inside and infected all of her friends and family, turning them crossed. She is forced to kill all of them, cutting their bodies into pieces using her father's samurai sword. She unties Ryan and sets him free, asking him to leave, and then she goes back to her bedroom where she does seppuku, taking her own life and saving her family's honor. The next story begins at the US Navy base in Norfolk, Virginia, with Captain Barnes witnessing two Crossed soldiers hitting their commanding officer. The Crossed are just as much an enemy to themselves as they are to normal humans. Whatever it is that makes them what they are, it also destroys them. They won't last. If humanity wants to survive, they must band together and not let the sickness of the Crossed enter into their hearts, bodies, or minds. In the present, the captain and Dr. El Sayed board the ship of Mr. Frank Bespit, who is living and surviving aboard his fishing ship by catching what he can. The captain is part of a bigger crew who live aboard a warship, and they need someone who can catch fish and feed them, but they hear something inside his cabin. The man was keeping his daughter hostage, tied in chains, but that's not all. She was also pregnant with his baby. They take them back to the ship where the rest of the crew was waiting for them. Jerry Stillwell was a weapons designer for Lockheed Martin, and he was here with his wife, Susan. Kimoho Okano was a foreman before joining the US Navy. Pete's family ran one of the largest construction companies in Philadelphia, and Ella Stern is the captain's second in command and one tough woman. The captain tells the doctor to take Amanda down to the infirmary, but her father isn't allowed to get anywhere near her. After a first inspection, the doctor concludes that there aren't any signs of. As far as he's concerned, the relationship between the two of them was consensual. A group of kids were locked inside one of the rooms because they've been bad. Two of the older kids, Leo and Melissa, were in a relationship together, but when the captain found out, he sent them on a suicide mission. The crew continues the journey up north all throughout winter, avoiding the warmer areas where the Crossed might still run rampant. Amanda gave birth to a retarded boy, proof that inbreeding has very negative effects on children. Meanwhile, in Garden Key, 70 miles west of Key West, Florida, Mateo and his two sons, Ernesto and Domingo, were trying to survive this apocalypse. They were gathering fruits and growing vegetables which were easy to grow in this beautiful weather. Leo and Melissa, the two teenagers who were expelled from the ship for being in a relationship, finally found what they were looking for. The captain asked them to find another ship they could use, or else he would never let them go back. The two teenagers made love and Melissa got pregnant, which the captain clearly forbids on the ship. She claims the captain did it to keep the other kids pure. He did it for them as well. But Leo doesn't think so. He doesn't trust the captain and thinks he wants Melissa for himself. By this point, she is completely brainwashed and attacks him, hitting him in the head with her axe and claiming some souls can't be cleansed, only burned. Back at the ship, Jerry asks the captain if he can make love with his wife. It's been so long, but this is strictly forbidden under his leadership. He claims he wants to create a new world, and this new doctrine was created to help them cleanse themselves of depravity, something that destroyed the old world. Susan wasn't happy about this decision and complains to Ella, remarking that they don't even know for sure if Barnes was actually a captain. She thinks he was the warden at the US Naval Brig in Norfolk. He spent half of his life keeping people in cages that he designed, which is exactly what he wants to do here. Over in Fort Jefferson, Ernesto and Domingo did something bad, so the father makes them pray together. The father claims he is able to speak to God, who agreed to forgive them, and the three of them enjoy a nice dinner next to the fire. Melissa calls the captain and informs him about the dredge she and Leo had found, with a working engine and a suitable cargo of topsoil. Unfortunately, the ship has run aground, and they'll have to proceed upriver through the city and use the warship to pull it free. Unfortunately, it's summer and the city of New Orleans is overrun with the crust. Ho'okano claims they can use the soil to grow crops, so they need to free the dredge at any cost. The crew comes up with a plan, but it's gonna get them awfully close to the city. But the captain claims that in order to get to paradise, they need to get through hell first. Pete sneaks inside the city and plants explosives in strategic places, detonating them and causing a lot of noise. The crust are lured by the loud noise, but when they get there, another explosion goes off. This gives the warship enough cover to sneak undetected, but not all crust are fooled as easily. Melissa took Frank to the barge in order to free it from the seabed, but he had other intentions. He visited her and asked her to keep quiet about the whole thing. He claims the captain offered her as a reward for freeing the ship, and it will do her no good to tell anyone about what just happened. Their cover is eventually blown, and a couple of crossed pirates rush aboard a smaller ship. The crew mounts a defense on the warship, while the children are taken by Dr. El Sayed to the shore so they can hide until this whole thing is over. The warship was behind the barge, while the crust were ahead of them in their smaller boats. Suddenly, they jump into the water and swim toward them. The crew mounts the cannons and begins shooting the crust out of the water and blowing their limbs off. One of the boats gets close enough and the person that was driving it shoots a water cannon toward the crew. Unfortunately, the water was infected with crust blood and it instantly turns anyone that comes in contact with it. The story now jumps into the future at Fort Jefferson, one of the largest naval combat fortifications in the Western Hemisphere. The crew had survived the attack and were now living here, which the captain calls paradise. During the attack, the warship was badly damaged and was quickly sinking to the bottom of the river. The captain wants everyone to get inside the rafts and escape, but Jerry doesn't want to leave. His wife was hit with the water cannon and turned into a crust, together with Hokano, who was kicking her from behind. The husband doesn't want to live without her, so he goes outside to be together with her, while the other crossed board the ship. The captain was dragged inside the water by a female and they quickly sank underwater. He's able to kill her by suffocating her and then returns to the surface. Luckily, he was an excellent swimmer. But instead of going back to the raft, the captain boarded the warship, which was on fire and quickly sinking to the bottom of the river. The crust were after him, so he opened the door and went inside, even though the handle was burning hot. In the present, the kids are having an argument about the captain and the way he runs things. They are all supposed to listen to his orders and do as they are told, but Swana is not okay with this. Ernesto, one of the kids who lived here with his brother and father before the crew came, says that this place feels like a prison now, with made-up laws. Kieron thinks he is talking behind his back because he was speaking Spanish instead of English and slams him on the ground. His brother Domingo hooked up with one of the girls and got her pregnant, but when the captain found out, he wanted to kill him. Intimate relations are forbidden on the island according to the new laws, so Domingo ran away to save himself. His father was taken prisoner and held hostage until they found his kid. After the captain went inside the burning ship, he caught fire which burned his entire body, but so did the crust that chased him. He emerged on the other side and claimed he was reborn. He was now free of the filth and the sin of the outside world. He had become pure. They were eventually able to find Domingo, and the captain wanted to hang him for his crimes. Melissa was the one who cut the ropes, leaving him to suffocate while the others watched in horror. After killing a young man, the captain washes his face as if nothing happened, cleansing himself of his sins. Melissa walks in completely naked and offers herself to him, but he claims he is above such things now. He has become something else. He thinks of her as one of his children, and attributes their survival until this point to him. They are all alive now because of him. Amanda argues with Melissa because she wasn't taking care of her baby enough, the one she had with her dad when he raped her aboard the barge. Dr. El Sayed talks to the captain and complains about Frank's inbreeding. He's already fathered 2 sons, and if this stuff continues, they are going to create aberrations in the gene pool. The son he had with his daughter is retarded. Ella offers to take him out, allowing the captain to remain pure and taking the sin upon her. Ernesto gets into a heated argument with his father because he didn't do anything to stop his brother from getting killed. He slams him on the ground and spits on him, but Kieron convinces him to let it go and move on. While making dinner, Polly, one of the girls, confesses she is also pregnant, but that goes against the new laws. Melissa offers to talk to the captain and convince him to spare her, but she has other intentions. She convinces Polly to go out into the ocean and cleanse herself of her sins. Only by doing this will the captain forgive her. But while she was out there, Melissa sneaks up behind her and shoves her head underwater, trying to drown her. When she was done, she claims that her son will be the new prophet, not hers. She is the one who walked through hell, and this is her reward. Somewhere in the distance, crossed pirates are sailing toward the fort aboard one of the ships, and couldn't wait to get there to spread their sins. Ella wakes up in the middle of the night with someone pointing a gun at her. It was Frank, who knew that she wanted to kill him, because the captain told him so. Dr. El Sayed claims they only wanted to castrate him, but somehow that's worse. The three of them get into a heated argument, and during the altercation, Ella gets shot in the abdomen. Everyone heard the gunshots and woke up in the middle of the night, including Ernesto and Kieron, who slept together on the beach. The two of them were secretly gay, but the father is devastated upon seeing them together. Frank wants to kill the doctor as well, but Captain Barnes stops him, claiming they need him because of his profession. The captain wanted Ella gone because it was clear to him that she didn't really want to be here. There was a lust inside her growing for blood, and she couldn't be allowed into paradise. Mateo jumps out of nowhere and attacks his son, accusing him of perversions with another man. He then attacks Kieron as well and suffocates him, claiming his son doesn't belong to him. The crossed pirates have finally arrived on the island and surround the father from every direction. Melissa sees them trying to breach the fort and shoots toward the tower, unaware that people were inside. Frank and the captain both get shot, but he thought she wanted to kill him. She points her gun at him and fires again, this time hitting Frank in the head and blowing his brains out. A crossed woman sneaks up behind her and hits her on the back of the head with a rock, knocking her to the ground. The doctor points his gun at the captain, who lay injured on the ground, but doesn't want to kill him. Instead, he points the gun at himself and blows his own brains out. Outside, things were completely out of control as the crossed overran the fort and attacked everyone, including women and children. The next story begins in Britain in the year 2008, with the Prime Minister attending a public school and meeting the children and teachers. His security team is formed of 4 highly skilled men: Taff, Paddy, Jock, and their team leader, Harry. Once the visit is over, the Prime Minister goes inside his limousine, but Harry finds a radio device that was planted in his pocket. The Minister takes it out on Andrew Alistar, who is his trusted right hand, and it's his job to watch out for things like this. This didn't sit well with Alistar, who holds a grudge against Harry now. Once the mission was over, another team replaced them, which was led by a guy named John Duff. Alistar informs the Prime Minister that something happened in a small town, North Yorkshire, where the police officers found a man in the early hours of this morning, apparently in a state of some distress. He was incoherent. He attacked the officers that found him, but they subdued him and took him to the police station in Tethersby. An ambulance was called to the station to check on him, but when they got there, they found him walking around inside the station completely docile. One of the officers was in a coma, and the other was dead, it would seem, by his own hand. On further investigation, the entire population of Tethersby, around 450 people, had completely disappeared without a trace. The ambulance took the man from the police station and wanted to take him to the hospital, but it crashed on the way. The paramedics were found dead at the scene, and it's believed that they murdered each other. The first individual was still aboard, and once again, he was completely docile, not attempting to resist the officers who found him. The man was rushed to a quarantine facility that belongs to the government, one which is not far from where they are. Alistar thinks it's some kind of contagious infection that spreads from person to person, and he wants to take the Prime Minister to the facility, claiming they are equipped to handle this. Eventually, they agree to go there and are greeted by Dr. Anushka Chopra, who says the patient is inside. Out of nowhere, the man comes running outside, breaking through the glass door and rushing toward them. One of the bodyguards gets in the way and punches him in the face, knocking him unconscious, but his blood infects the bodyguard as well. The next day, Harry and his team are brought to the facility to replace the previous security team, because something horrible has happened. After they were infected with the man's blood, they turned violent and attacked other doctors. They had to lock them inside one of the labs, and Harry couldn't believe what happened to them. Dr. Chopra is worried because they don't know where the first patient was infected or where he was before being picked up. So far, the only thing they were able to deduce is that the virus spreads very fast. Harry suggests that the Prime Minister should declare a state of emergency and use the army to quarantine the region, but Alistar disagrees and doesn't like that a simple bodyguard is doing his job. Harry wants to talk to Patient Zero, but apparently he doesn't remember anything about his life. He doesn't even remember his name or where he comes from. All he can do is form simple sentences. Somehow, he feels that Harry has killed many people. He claims he can smell them on him. He can smell the stink of their screams. Harry and Alistar get into a heated argument, because he wanted to evacuate the Prime Minister and take him to a safer location. But Alistar thinks this facility is safe enough, though he's more worried about his own safety. It didn't take long for the news to break out that a whole town was missing, and TV stations were showing them heading somewhere in a large group. Sadly, they were all headed towards a large cliff, and once they got to the edge, they all started jumping with no consideration for their personal safety. At one of Britain's air bases, a fighter jet crashes into multiple planes on the ground, killing one pilot and injuring 2 others. Jackie and Tom pick themselves up and try to get away, but there is nothing more they can do for their dead friend. Out of nowhere, a truck runs through the main gate, headed their way, trying to kill anyone who gets in the way. The crash kills more people, but things are about to get much worse because a pack of infected people are headed their way through the fence. The Prime Minister was informed about the crash, but the base isn't responding anymore. They think the virus might be some kind of coordinated attack, but Dr. Chopra thinks there are better viruses out there if someone wanted to wipe them out. She still can't explain why Patient Zero is still docile, unlike everyone else who's been infected and showing extreme levels of aggression. Harry talks to him a second time and wants to know how he can smell the screams of his victims on him. Patient Zero can't explain, but he can taste murder. He can hear blood because it has a pounding, pumping sound. He can't explain what happened to him or how he got infected, but he thinks he might have hurt someone he cared about. The airbase was engulfed in complete chaos as the Crossed attacked the soldiers, and nobody knows what's going on. A team of soldiers was sent to retrieve pilots following a secret protocol, and Jackie and Tom were among the ones still not infected. Getting out of the base isn't easy, and they are forced to run over a couple of people to get away. Dr. Chopra claims the virus is mutating and hasn't reached full maturity just yet. The symptoms are different for each individual, but soon there's going to be nothing left but pure rage. The first signs of mutation are already happening, and the doctor shows Harry a cross sign that's been growing on people's faces. The military was brought in to keep this place safe, and Harry knows the guy in charge. Major Britain is a highly skilled soldier, and they quickly bring him up to date with everything that's been going on. Apparently, there have been reports of similar cases happening all over the world, including France, Pakistan, Chad, and even Australia. All of them have one thing in common. The infection began with one patient, just like Patient Zero. Alistair thinks that someone planned this whole thing, putting people in place to spread the infection. He thinks this is a coordinated attack. He and Harry get into another heated argument, but Alistair goes a bit too far and makes fun of his team, calling them savages. He eventually leaves the room, but that's just because Harry was close to losing his control and punching him. The pilot's car broke down and they had to run on foot, but the Crossed were chasing them. The soldier was badly injured and couldn't walk on his own anymore, so he gave them a map, telling them where to go and ordering them to leave him behind. Their country needs them more than he does, and he is willing to sacrifice himself. The Prime Minister talks to Vladimir Putin, who tells him that 40 Russian bombers carrying nukes have gone rogue and are flying towards the United States. He wants Britain to take them out, promising not to retaliate with war if he does. Either Putin has lost control of his military, or whatever is happening here is also happening to them. Apparently, the planes were gathered from two separate air divisions and were part of an exercise being run from an airbase. However, the Russians lost communications with the base, and all of the planes took off. Everyone else inside the base was later found dead, and the only survivors talked about seeing the crews march out to the aircraft like robots. It seems a body's been discovered in the base's water supply, Patient Zero like the one they have here. The government spoke to NORAD, who claimed that once the Russian airplanes enter US airspace, they're going to launch nukes. However, this decision belongs to the president, and the Prime Minister doesn't understand why NORAD is making decisions. They've tried multiple times to contact the White House, but without any luck. Luckily, one of the operators is able to get a line to the United States president, but someone from the other side talks nonsense, behaving as if he was infected himself. The Prime Minister realizes that the White House has been compromised. The two pilots were still trying to get to safety, but the Crossed were everywhere, and nobody was responding on the radio. The Prime Minister realizes the severity of the situation. If those planes make it to the States, there's going to be a full-blown nuclear war. He wants to send fighters to intercept them, but neither of the two air bases in range of the North Atlantic are answering. At least one of them seems to have suffered an incident similar to the one that happened near them, where the two pilots were. The Prime Minister is informed that there are several concealed bunkers across the country, each one containing a single nuclear-armed aircraft. In the event of a catastrophic attack on the UK, they provide a last-ditch means of striking back against the aggressor. Even without government and military control, the aircraft can still be launched against an enemy capital. The plan is to use one of those planes and nuke the Russian aircraft right out of the sky. They've intercepted radio transmissions from two aircrew pilots who are apparently still alive but missing. They were supposed to be taken to one of the bunkers when the attack began, but that didn't happen. The Prime Minister wants Harry and his team to go out there and find them, and even though it's not their job, he doesn't trust anyone else to get it done. It was already dark, but they are quickly able to find them using the radio, though it wasn't safe. Harry wants them to fire a couple of bullets to know where they are hiding, but many Crossed come running toward them. Luckily, the crew was close by and they came out guns blazing. While they were gone, Alistair asks Major Britain to go inside the lab and interrogate Patient Zero, claiming the whole country is at stake and they need to find out everything he knows. The two pilots were finally brought to their destination, a secret bunker that has an airplane armed with a nuclear warhead. But the place is surrounded by the Crossed, and getting it into the air isn't going to be easy. The infection was spreading at an alarming rate, and misinformation on media was spreading just as fast. The Prime Minister is afraid of releasing a statement telling citizens what they can or can't do, because they themselves don't know what to do. One of the advisors is convinced that they can stop the spread of the infection by stopping all means of travel, stopping the trains, blocking roads, and of course flying. In the lab, 2 soldiers are beating patient Zero, interrogating him for more information about the virus. He fights back and defends himself, and during the altercation, he is able to infect one of the soldiers. He was able to put his finger inside the man's mouth, and it only took a couple of seconds for the virus to do its thing. The airplane tries to take off while Harry and his team clear a path through the infected. However, the plane was armed to the teeth, and the pilots are able to clear a path using the machine guns. A couple of people were able to grab onto the plane and hold tight, but they were quickly shaken off the moment the pilot accelerated. Major Britain had no idea just how serious the virus was, but after seeing what happened to Agent Duff and his people, he realized he made a mistake. He goes back to Patient Zero to stop the interrogation, but Alistair gets in the way. Suddenly, the doors open and the soldiers drag him inside, throwing him on the ground. The soldiers were having a 69 on the floor, eating each other's organs, and Patient Zero claims it's Alistair's turn once they are done. He starts begging for his life, claiming he is a very powerful man and he can influence the Prime Minister. But Patient Zero doesn't care. He opens a brand new pack of scalpels, as he plans on ways of torturing him. The pilots finally come face to face with the squadron of Russian bombers, and their suspicions were true. The pilots are all infected. The security crew stops on the way back because Harry wants to talk about something. He claims he didn't do a very good job at protecting the Prime Minister. They should have gone to London when this whole thing started and coordinate a defense from there. Apparently the order was given to lock the Prime Minister inside the nuclear bunker later today, and their services are no longer required. Most of them have families and children, so he releases them from duty and orders them to go be with them. If things get too bad and they can't use phones to communicate any longer, he wants them to meet again at the cottage in the Brakens in 10 days' time. During the initial takeoff, the aircraft fuel system was damaged and they didn't have enough fuel to finish the mission. There's no way for them to detonate the bomb and escape safely, so they decide to go down with the ship. The bomb is detonated in the air, destroying the entire Russian squadron and preventing a nuclear war between the United States and Russia. Harry returns to the bunker to tell the president about his mission, and he thanks him for his services. As a thank you, he gives him a piece of paper containing the location and entrance codes to a secret bunker where he can go in case things get much worse. The 2 men say goodbye to each other and shake hands, but just as the vault door was being closed, Dr. Chopra, who was now a Crossed herself, attacks the Prime Minister from behind. Harry tells Major Britain that the vault and the Prime Minister's been compromised, and he shouldn't follow any orders coming from there. He then goes back inside to kill everyone left standing, including Patient Zero, who was still in his cell. The virus began mutating once again, and the crossed sign was now visible on his face as well. Harry, however, doesn't hesitate and ends him with a quick bullet to the head. The next story begins with the Crossed doing what they do best, giant orgies and mutilating each other, but someone was watching them. A sniper shoots at them from a distance, taking out an entire group who were having sex from behind. 2 young women, Jane and her friend Esperanza, were hiding in the sewers below. One of the Crossed hears them screaming and jumps down to violate them. We see a flashback to 7 months ago. When the outbreak began, Jane's daughter killed her little brother by gouging his eyes out. She then went after her mother, wanting to do the same to her. Esperanza is a tough woman. She picks up a crowbar and attacks the man, stabbing him in the neck and instantly killing him. They try to get away on the other side, but a Crossed woman gets in the way. The sniper from earlier shoots at her, blowing her head off with a precise shot. Alejandro, Esperanza's brother, sees them trying to get away and orders the other Crossed to chase them. In the past, he was there when Jane's daughter wanted to kill her own mother, but he stopped her with an axe. The sniper thinks about shooting the girls and ending their suffering early, but he reconsiders and helps them escape. Every time they got close to the 2 girls, he blew their brains off. They eventually reach an old bridge, but the place around it was filled with traps, and the Crossed are unable to catch them. The whole bridge was booby-trapped and the floor collapsed. The Crossed dropped to their deaths on sharp stakes that were lit on fire, giving the girls enough time to make it to the other side. The sniper and their savior, a very handsome man with long hair and a beard, were waiting for them. Some Crossed were still alive and they managed to climb out of the hole, but the man quickly took them out with his sniper. The man's name is Sutter Edwards, and it wasn't quite what the girls were expecting. After Jane lost both of her kids, she wanted to ask for help from a police officer, unaware that he was a Crossed himself. Esperanza saved her a second time, but she needed to be more careful if she wanted to stay alive. Everyone is dangerous and they can't trust anyone with a cross mark on their faces. The Crossed never stop, They keep pushing and chasing until they catch what they are after, or they die trying. Luckily, Edward had a car hidden in the woods, but it was booby-trapped in case someone else tried to steal it. He jumps in the back and fights off some infected, while the girls get behind the wheel and drive away. In the past, the streets were quickly overrun with infected people who came at them from every direction. They were able to escape by taking an ambulance, but like I mentioned earlier, the Cross never stopped. They were eventually able to get away by running into a parked car and killing off one of them that was trying to grab Jane. After escaping the Cross in the forest, Edward takes the two girls back to his camp, where other people have grouped together and created a small community. A man named Collins introduces himself and welcomes them, but Alejandro was following them, tracking oil that was spilled from the truck. Esperanza was injured during the escape, but luckily Collins is a good medic and stitches her wounds. He's also chief cook, bottle washer, and many more things around. If the girls plan to stay here, they need to contribute and be a part of the community in some way. He offers them a safe place where they can sleep, but doesn't take responsibility for building this place. It was all done by Edward. He found Collins and brought him here, and then did the same thing for many more people, offering them a safe place to live and be together. In the past, after they escaped Jane's neighborhood, the three of them found refuge inside an abandoned cabin in the middle of the woods. But it wasn't safe for long, because the Cross found them and broke inside. The place was quickly surrounded and the crazies were attacking them from every direction. In the present, everyone is having dinner and spending time together, but Esperanza isn't so sure about this place. Something feels off. She follows Edward into the forest and sees him doing something near one of the many fuel tanks that were scattered around the camp. In the past, Esperanza got pinned down on the ground and a woman wanted to infect her, but her brother stepped in and broke her neck. Unfortunately, he was bitten during the attack and in just a few seconds, he turned crossed himself. Esperanza needed to know what Edward was doing and discovered that the fuel tanks were all wired to blow up. While Edward was keeping watch, Collins brought him some coffee and showed him a pack of Crossed heading their way. Out of nowhere, he stabs the man from behind and then pushes him over the fence, leaving him as bait for the Crossed. Esperanza realizes this place isn't as safe as they had initially hoped, so she wakes her friend up in the middle of the night. The Crossed get closer and Edward begins shooting them, alerting everyone inside the camp. Everyone is given weapons, and the girls are asked if they know how to shoot. Everyone goes outside and stands behind the fence, shooting towards the crazies, trying to keep them as far as possible from getting close. Alejandro throws a spear over the fence and hits one of the people inside. The tip was tainted with infected blood and he quickly turns crossed. Infection spreads like fire, jumping from person to person and creating chaos inside the camp. The fence is eventually destroyed and the crazies storm inside, running towards their victims, trying to mutilate them. The two girls ambush Edward inside one of the cabins as he was trying to escape through a tunnel. He had the trigger that could blow up the entire camp if he wanted, but Jane blows his hand off, forcing him to drop it. During the altercation, Esperanza is shot, but luckily she survives. As if this wasn't bad enough, an infected man breaks through the window and attacks him. The girls pick up the trigger and then escape through the tunnel, leaving Edward to fight for his life. He is eventually overrun and Alejandro turns him into one of them by spitting blood on his open wound. The entire camp was now in complete chaos and the people had lost all control and were being abused by the Crossed. Alejandro follows his sister through the tunnels, but he brought a few of his friends along. Esperanza can't run anymore. The gunshot was causing her to lose a lot of blood and she wants to give up. The two girls press the trigger and detonate the barrels filled with fuel, causing a massive explosion that blows up the entire camp. They eventually make it out of the tunnel in one piece. But they weren't alone. Alejandro survives as well. Esperanza goes unconscious and can't continue anymore. So Jane takes her knife and stabs her in the chest, ending her before the Crossed could abuse her. Her turn is next, but luckily for her, Alejandro steps in one of the traps planted by Edward, which breaks both of his legs. She then takes a big rock and smashes his head, leaving her as the only survivor from the camp. But she doesn't want to live all alone in this dangerous world. There is no safe place anymore, there is nothing, and all of this was for nothing. Instead of running and continuing to try and survive, she gives up and uses Alejandro's blood to infect herself. The next story begins with Gavin Land searching for the people who killed his daughter Jennifer. She ran away from home to LA when she was just 16 because she wanted to be an actress, but unfortunately, she got involved with the wrong people who took advantage of her and introduced her to drugs. Gavin goes to the house of one of the producers who exploited his daughter, but finds only a man who used to work for him, but now he was a Crossed. A few years ago, when he came to LA, he met with Curtis Wentz, who is a famous producer with lots of connections. He claims he met Jennifer but didn't offer her a job because she was inexperienced. Instead, he told her to go home and be with her family. Sadly, her story takes an even darker turn because she got involved in the porn industry. Gavin goes looking for another man involved in his daughter's death, one of the actors who filmed with her. He is a lot older, and Gavin accuses him of taking advantage of Jennifer, who was only 16 at that time. The man apologizes but claims it doesn't matter anymore because it's the end of the world. He starts peeing himself and compliments Gavin for being a real man, claiming he can now have any woman he wants and repopulate the world. But the dad could never forgive him for what he did to his little girl, and he breaks open his head with a baseball bat. In the past, when he started asking too many questions, Wentz sent 2 of his thugs to take him out, but things didn't really work out that way. Gavin was able to escape by rolling down a hill and landing on the highway below. He woke up several minutes later in a state of shock, but luckily a woman driving on the road saw him just moments before hitting him. After killing the actor, he crossed his name off the list of suspects and goes looking for others responsible for his daughter's death. However, it wasn't going to be easy, because there is an outbreak going on and the Crossed have taken over the world. The streets are filled with savages doing unspeakable things to normal humans and to themselves. He uses his machete to clear a path down to the docks, where he barely manages to escape on a boat. His investigation led him to a video store where it's not uncommon to find illegal porn. Gavin went inside and found a video of his daughter making love with the man from before. That's how he knew who to hunt. Just moments before killing him, the actor told him that Wentz and his top people went to the beautiful island of Catalina when the outbreak began. Gavin arrives on the island but finds the same type of chaos here as well. He finds an abandoned house and sees one of Wentz's bodyguards having sex with his secretary. This guy was a complete piece of shit, and he abused the woman, threatening her and even beating her. He recognizes Gavin and wants to shoot him, but if he does, the Crossed will come rushing in. The man decides to put his gun back and fight man to man, but the woman steals it from him and blows his brains out. He was horrible to her, and she couldn't wait to get her revenge. But now the Crossed were alerted to their presence and come running at them. They take a golf cart down to the docks and use a grenade to clear a path and escape on the boat. The 2 of them met before, when Gavin first came looking for his daughter. She warned him about Wentz and claimed she tried to help Jennifer, but it was just too late. She claims that when the outbreak began, Wentz went a little crazy, reading the Bible and thinking this is the end of the world. He and a couple of his closest people left Catalina and moved to another, more private island somewhere in Mexico, where they planned to wait it out and see if the outbreak eventually stopped. The secretary feels sorry about Jennifer, but Gavin doesn't care. After getting the information, he blows her brains out, remarking that she should have tried harder to save his daughter. After seeing his daughter in one of the movies, Gavin interrogated the video store owner, demanding to know who made the video. The man told him about Wentz, a big-shot producer who makes porn movies. In the present, he arrives at the Mexican border, but things weren't looking too great. There was a Crossed attack and the soldiers were overrun. They were barely keeping up with the invasion. A young girl jumps in the water and swims towards his boat, but the infected were after her. He is able to save her, and they both escape just moments before the army shows up and shoots the entire beach from a helicopter. The girl's name is Haley, and she's only 16 years old, just like Jennifer was before she was killed. In the past, Gavin went to a club looking for Wentz and found him having fun in the private room with a couple of girls. The bodyguards refused to let him pass, so he took out his gun and started shooting. The situation quickly escalated, and during the fight, he shot a couple of innocent people who had nothing to do with his daughter's death, including 2 women from the club. He did manage to hit Wentz in the abdomen, but it didn't kill him and he was able to escape. Gavin was arrested and taken to prison for murder, and he didn't even get to accomplish his mission of avenging his daughter. His wife visited him in prison but said he turned into a monster. He shamed the memory of his daughter by killing those innocent people. He was locked away for a very long time, but Wentz survived and wrote him a letter. He taunted him, claiming he was feeling so much better, but in return, he was going to make his life behind bars a living hell. His people kidnapped Gavin's son, a 10-year-old boy, and sold him on the sex trafficking market abroad. His wife wanted to get him back, but she didn't have any money because they were dependent on Gavin, who was now locked up for life. Wentz taunted him, claiming his wife became a prostitute and porn actress so she could get enough money to find her son, but Gavin was having problems of his own in prison. Dangerous inmates were paid to make his life a living hell, and he was seriously injured after a couple of them ambushed him in the showers. In the present, he and Haley arrive in a Mexican town where they are surrounded by Wentz's men, and he comes face to face with his second-in-command, a man named Soaks. Soaks takes him back to his boss, who was helping the locals, Mexican families, get onto ships that were heading towards his secret island, which was safe from the Crossed outbreak. Wentz finally shows himself, but he claims he only wants to talk and begs him to listen for 5 minutes to what he has to say. When the outbreak began, he saw the world for what it truly was and became very religious. He recently found out about a giant cruise ship docked near the San Diego Naval Base, which can accommodate over 6,000 people. Just like Noah and his ark, he wants to use the cruise ship and move from place to place, sit on the open waters, and wait until the outbreak ends and the Crossed have all died. But to do this, he wants Gavin's help in stealing the ship from whoever has it. He eventually agrees, but he still shoots Soaks in the head, claiming that this changes nothing. He still wants to kill him in the end, but at least he crossed one more name off his list. We see another memory of Gavin fighting the same convicts who ambushed him in the showers, only this time, he came equipped with hidden weapons, which allowed him to get the upper hand. Gavin agrees to help Wentz steal the cruise ship and take the people to safety. But Haley wanted to come along, even though it was much too dangerous for a teenager like her. She eventually sneaks aboard their ship, but they come across 2 other boats filled with crossed people. They have no sense of preservation, so they crash the boat straight into Wentz's people, causing a massive crash. The situation turns to chaos in just a few seconds, and the people are quickly overwhelmed. They eventually crash on land, but most of Wentz's crew was killed during the attack. In the past, after Gavin dealt with the convicts who wanted to kill him, he became the new alpha dog and convinced the other inmates to join his new gang. He then talked to the warden and convinced him to back him as well, promising to run the gangs and lower the violence inside the prison, just as long as he left him alone until he was eligible for parole, which was in 10 years. In the present, they eventually make it to San Diego, but the situation was the same as everywhere else. The military was desperately trying to keep things under control, but the Crossed were just too many. While he was locked up, Wentz kept sending him pictures of his wife, tormenting him, but he stopped opening them. 5 years have passed since the warden agreed to help him run things inside the prison, but once the outbreak began, he and the other officers were turned and came to kill the inmates. Sergeant Jack was leading the soldiers on the ground, trying to fend off the Crossed invasion, but the naval base was overrun and the streets looked like a battlefield. Gavin and Wentz disguised themselves to look like soldiers, pretending to be one of them, but they were actually trying to get down to the docks and steal the cruise ship. In the past, the prison was in complete chaos as the inmates were fighting the Crossed guards. The infection was spreading from person to person, but Gavin quickly realized that it was transmitted by exchanging bodily fluids. Gavin asks Haley to stay close to him, even if she has to dig her nails into his flesh and hold for her dear life. A helicopter flies over and shoots towards them, trying to hit the Crossed, but one of the rockets causes a big explosion which nearly kills them. Upon waking up, Haley had disappeared, and they couldn't find her anywhere. In the past, Gavin and other inmates found the armory and stocked up on weapons and bullets. They had enough to take out all the guards. Once the fence fell, they only had to make a run for it, but the yard was filled with infected, and it wasn't going to be easy. In the present, the sergeant was informing his fellow soldiers that in a couple of hours the Air Force is going to bomb the city and flatten everything in sight. But there are still over 250,000 civilians hiding in their homes that need to be evacuated first. He wants 50 men to stay with him and evacuate the city, but that's probably a suicide mission. Wentz tells Gavin that in order to get to the ship and save his soul, they first need to help evacuate these families, so they volunteer to help the sergeant, and maybe they'll find Haley as well. The soldiers were now going from house to house looking for any possible survivors, but they stumble upon a gruesome sight that could make anyone's stomach turn. In some places there was nothing they could do besides blowing up the entire home. The explosion caused a loud noise which alerted most of the Crossed in the area, but the sergeant warned them that this was going to be a suicide mission. They quickly deal with a bunch of them and then continue to search for survivors. They come across a neighborhood that still had people locked inside their homes, and the sergeant asked them to follow them. Gavin and Wentz stumble upon a gruesome scene where a man's body was dismembered all across the floor. A young Crossed girl was feeding on the man's organs, but they thought she was Haley. After dealing with her, a woman and her 6 children come out. They were hiding in the basement all this time. Gavin forces Wentz to tell him the worst thing he did to his wife because he wanted to feel angry with him. After he kidnapped their little boy, he got her addicted to drugs and forced her to do unspeakable things for her next fix, while his people took pictures which he mailed to Gavin in prison. Gavin gets furious and kicks the shit out of him, but he doesn't want to kill him just yet. Wentz talks to a couple of soldiers who tell him they remember seeing a young blonde woman being carried by one of their colleagues right after the explosion. He thinks Haley is still alive, but Gavin isn't so sure and threatens to kill him. Wentz comes clean and claims that his wife and son are still alive. He took them to his secret island and ordered his people to keep them safe as insurance. If Gavin ever wants to see them alive, he needs to help him steal the cruise ship. The Crossed were everywhere, and most of the homes were already empty or filled with dead bodies, but there were some survivors as well. Gavin stumbles upon another gruesome sight of a Crossed man feeding on a woman's organs, and he thinks it's Haley. Fortunately, it wasn't her, and the search continues. The time was up, and the Air Force was already here and planning to flatten the entire city. The soldiers start running towards the docks, but the two men see another blonde girl and they think it's Haley. Gavin follows her inside an abandoned shack, but when he goes inside, he sees her on the ground with a pair of giant scissors in her hand. It was just another crossed girl, but before he could take her out, one of the bombs drops nearby and destroys the shack. The woman was still alive, and she gets up to attack him, but Wentz takes her out. The city was now burning as the jets were dropping bombs everywhere, purging the city of the crossed infection. They eventually arrive at a camp that was created to keep civilians safe, but there are too many of them. Apparently, the Navy sent part of a fleet from Hawaii to come pick them up, but not everybody is going to make it aboard. Most of the crossed from the city were now fleeing towards the docks, where the sergeant and his men were waiting for them. Meanwhile, Gavin steals a tank and creates a diversion, moving the barricades and clearing a way to the docks where the ship was docked. He then tries to get as many people aboard as he can, making sure that no women and children are left behind. They rush inside the deck and threaten the captain to get the boat moving. Otherwise, they will get overrun by the crossed. Out of nowhere, Haley comes walking in, wondering what took them so long to get here. The docks were now taken by the crossed, but it wasn't enough for them, so they jump in the waters trying to get aboard the ships. They swim all the way to the closest warship and get aboard, overtaking the soldiers and doing what they do best. Two helicopters are forced to open fire and take out one of their own ships. They couldn't risk letting the crossed get access to the weapons on board. Someone opens fire on the city, killing the remaining crossed that were still alive. It was the fleet which came here from Hawaii, but things were far from looking great. Eventually, the cruise ship leaves the docks and heads into the open sea, following the directions that Wentz gave them about his secret island. Haley says that after the explosion, she woke up confused, but luckily one of the soldiers found her and carried her to safety. Unfortunately, he was attacked and eaten alive by the crossed, and she had blood all over her clothes, so she was forced to abandon them and find new ones. That's why they mistook her for one of the crossed girls, who found her clothes and took them. Now that he has directions to the island they are aboard the ship, Gavin begins torturing Wentz. He eventually comes clean and confesses he wasn't actually religious. He was playing an act trying to fool him. Gavin was going to kill him anyway, no point in continuing to lie. They eventually arrive at the secret island, but the place looked abandoned, and there was nobody there to greet them. Gavin goes searching for his family, but he finds crossed people who overdosed on drugs. Apparently, Wentz anticipated that the crossed would eventually find the island, so he replaced the drugs with cyanide. He knew they couldn't resist getting high, but instead, they injected poison into their bodies and killed themselves. The whole island was filled with dead bodies, and there were no survivors left alive. Gavin asks Haley to stay behind and not move as he goes deeper to search for his family, but never returns and just disappears into the night. The next story happened in Tokyo. 3 days after the crossed sickness had reached even Japan. Homicidal summon wrestlers, psychotic TV hosts, killer cops. It was happening all over the world, but nobody did it better than the Japanese people. Satoshi is a manga writer and friends with Emiko, whose story we've already covered earlier. 10 years ago, a group of friends became inseparable, sharing their passion for music, movies, and of course reading manga. Another thing they shared in common was that all of them were losers. Satoshi was a manga writer, Hazuki was kind of rich because her father was Yakuza. Miko came from a broken family and was into metal. Koki was big and strong just like his father who worked at the fish market. Taro was ashamed of his family because his dad was an alcoholic, while his mother died of some horrible disease when he was about 3. One night, after getting in trouble with a couple of gang members, the group decided to become comrades for life. They sealed the deal with their own blood and named themselves the 5 Bloody Fingers. In the present, the group didn't hang out as much as they used to, but once the crossed appeared, Satoshi decided to reunite the group, and he started by saving Taro first. Boss Yamada is Hazuki's father, and he is one of the local Yakuza gang leaders. One of his men was attacked and skinned alive by the crossed, and they wanted to do the same thing to him as well. Yamada has a personal lion named Usama, which he trained from a young age to be his personal bodyguard. He and his men are able to deal with the crossed, but Satoshi shows up looking for Hazuki. Koki is working for Yamada. He is actually his right hand, and he asks his boss to spare the two guys because they are all friends. Hazuki was attending a cosplay festival in one of the city's parks, together with Miku, but the place was overrun with the crossed, and she wants her father to come save her. Yamada takes his best men, alongside his daughter's friends, and goes to the festival to try and save her. However, the entire city was in chaos, and they quickly run into a dead end. Tens of infected people come running towards them, but the gang was armed to the teeth and ready to deal with them. Yamada sends his personal lion to attack. Thankfully, the crossed virus doesn't affect animals, and the animal is able to slash through them with ease. The way to the festival wasn't going to be easy. The entire city was in chaos and you couldn't drive anymore. The group is eventually pushed into a side alley, and while the Yakuza stays behind to deal with the infected, the group of friends tries to find an exit. Satoshi decides the only way out is to sacrifice the Yakuza, and they use a rocket launcher to seal the alley entrance, leaving Yamada and his men to be overrun by the Crossed. Meanwhile, Hazuki and Miku find a warehouse to hide while they wait for her father to save them. Something drops from above and lands on Hazuki's head. It was human flesh mixed with blood. 2 crossed girls were locked inside with them, and they were feasting on a man's body right above them. The guys arrive just in time to save them, and Taro throws 2 grenades, causing their bodies to explode. Satoshi claims that Yamada was killed on their way here, but he wasn't. He and his pet lion were able to deal with the Crossed, and now he wants to kill them, accusing them of leaving him to die. 8 years ago, Satoshi and Hazuki spent an amazing night making love together. She still thinks of him as a friend, but wanted to help him lose his virginity because she likes him a lot. In the present, Satoshi claims he loves her, but in order to save her, he had to leave her father behind as bait. Yamada laughs in his face and mocks him, threatening to kill all of them, including Koki, who betrayed him even though he was supposed to be his right hand. Before he could do anything, the Crossed come out of nowhere and attack them, so they are forced to run inside the warehouse. They make their first stand in one of the rooms that was designed to replicate a death by 1,000 cuts. Luckily for them, the Crossed get easily distracted and the urge to is stronger than the urge to kill. The group still has a few grenades left, and they use them to dispose of the leftover Crossed all at once. Yamada wants Koki to prove that he is still loyal and asks him to cut off his pinky finger, which he does willingly. He then decides to spare everyone else, everyone except Satoshi, whom he asks his pet lion to kill. As this was going on, something was wrong with Hazuki, who slowly begins to turn Crossed, thanks to the blood that came in contact with her skin earlier. We then see a memory of her when she was just a little girl, while her father was trying to train Usama. He wanted her to follow in his footsteps, but in order to be the Yakuza leader, she had to be ruthless. He took her puppy and fed it to the lion, trying to turn her into a ruthless person just as he was. As she was turning Crossed, she orders Usama to leave Satoshi alone, and the lion listens to her. She then accuses her father of killing her own mother, claiming that nobody loves him, and she truly hates him ever since he fed her puppy to the lion. The father was hurt by what his daughter was saying, and he can't take it anymore, so he blows his brains out. The group then jumps her from behind, and they manage to put a bag over her head, preventing her from biting them. They had no clue what to do with her, so they tied her down while they talked it over. The Crossed were all gathered outside of the warehouse entrance, engaged in a giant orgy, too busy to notice anything else that was going on around them. The group spends the next 2 days locked inside, using the snacks from the vending machine to feed themselves. They eventually lift the bag over Hazuki's head, but she doesn't scream for help, nor does she order Usama to kill them. She claims that they are her best friends and she wants them to become Crossed as well, just like they promised when they became blood brothers. They vowed to be at each other's side if one of them needed it. They vowed to be together forever, and what better time than this? Thinking that this is the end of the world and there is no going back to normal life, the group decides to infect themselves with their blood, and together they become the 5 bloody fingers once again. They go back outside, and together with Usama, they get back at the Crossed and viciously take them out, together forever. Before the infection began, a group of friends went to Princeton University to attend a class by the famous Professor Nelson. Washington brought his girlfriend Amy and his friend Tommy because they wanted to have a good laugh at the professor. Apparently he has a crazy theory that humanity went nearly extinct 70,000 years ago because of a contagious virus, and not because of the Ice Age. The professor claims he has proof, but nobody believes him, and even the students think he is a joke. In the present, the Crossed infection had spread across the entire country, and the professor's theory doesn't sound so crazy anymore. Washington returns to the university and searches through the professor's documents, hoping to find more information about the virus and possibly a cure. 70,000 years ago, a group of young hunters are returning home after they catch a giant alligator. But something was wrong. Their village was attacked by the Bloodmen, a race of horrible hunters who viciously attacked, mutilated and dismembered everyone in the village. As if killing them wasn't enough, the Bloodmen also took their bodily fluids and collected them in human skulls. Lion, one of the young hunters from the village, was taken prisoner alongside 3 other friends, Arrow, Flint and Sandstorm, and they were taken aboard giant ships. In the present, Washington looks through the professor's files and thinks he was onto something, maybe even possibly a cure, and he is determined to find out the truth. He wasn't working alone. He was together with 4 other soldiers: Warren, aka the leader, Ronnie, who was kinda on the edge, Lewis, aka the tech expert, and Curtis, an adrenaline junkie who likes to shoot bows. Washington was very smart, and he is a weapons expert. They kept him around because he built some good weapons to take out the Crossed. Apparently, Amy started working for the professor and found that he had a secret bunker hidden in the woods. The group goes looking for the bunker, hoping to find more answers about the Crossed virus, possibly a cure. In the past, Lion and his friends were kept alive aboard the ship by feeding on other people's corpses. Eventually, they reached land and were taken to the Bloodmen village, which was built at the base of an active volcano. Inside, the place was just as expected. Normal people were kept as slaves and used by the Bloodmen for their own amusement. They were taken to the temple, where they are introduced to the Bloodmen leaders: first brother, first sister, and the first child. These three are smarter than the others, and they can even speak Lion's language. The younger child wants to violate Sandstorm, and as the youngest leader, he is allowed to do anything he wants. In the present, the group finds Tommy's body, who attended the class together with Washington and Amy. He was killed, and half of his body was blown away. Suddenly, there is a loud explosion, and the group rushes to see what was happening. Curtis tried to open one of the vault doors, but it was booby-trapped and it nearly killed him. Unfortunately, the loud explosion was heard by a large group of Crossed, who headed their way to check it out. After being violated, Sandstorm was quiet and didn't say a word, while Flint found some bone fragments on the ground and he wanted to take his own life. The Bloodmen tied his hands and stopped him from killing himself. They were kept alive for something else, and whatever it would be, the end was close. In the morning, a priest arrives and paints their faces and bodies using bodily fluids from other people, but the stench was horrible. They were taken to a giant arena where every bloodman in the village attended. The young hunters were thrown inside and given weapons to defend themselves against other attackers. As if this wasn't enough, saber-tooths jump out of nowhere and attack them, killing Flint first. Giant rhinos, mammoths, saber-tooths, and even giant birds were all brought here for the first child's amusement. This was a ceremony dedicated to him, but it wasn't actually to celebrate him. The first brother and first sister played a cruel joke on him. They made him think this was for him, when in fact they wanted to eat him and turn his body into furniture. The two of them find it amusing lying to him all this time, and the bloodmen inside the arena were roaring. But something unexpected happens. Everyone is ecstatic, but this has a weird effect on them. Some of the bloodmen develop a cross sign on their faces and behave even more violently, attacking each other and viciously mutilating each other. Very quickly, the entire arena is engulfed in chaos as the bloodmen turn crossed and attack each other. In the present, the group manages to get inside the vault after Curtis blew open one of the entrances. But the thing is a dead end, and there is another door they can't open because it doesn't have any power. Pretty soon the Crossed enter as well, and one of them sees them hiding in the back next to the door. There is no way out, and they need to open the door, but Washington needs to get power on first. Arrows are not enough to stop the Crossed, so the group begins shooting, but there are just too many of them. In the past, the hunters decide to use this opportunity and escape, while the Crossed jump inside the arena and attack the animals as well. They jump over a giant crack in the ground, but one of them doesn't make it all the way. He eventually turns Crossed as well, and his friends are forced to drop him in the melting lava below. The two leaders realize that something is not right. Even though their people are vicious and brutal, this is beyond anything they have ever seen. They decide to leave and return to the temple, choosing to save their own asses. Lion and Sandstorm are the only ones left alive now, and they are attacked by a giant rat, which crawls out of a hole in the ground. They dodge its attacks and manage to sneak inside the hole from where the animal crawled out, escaping the arena. Inside the vault, Ronnie panics and throws one of his own men to the Crossed, trying to delay them long enough for Washington to open the door. While their friend was being mutilated and abused, Washington is eventually able to open the door, but Warren shoots Ronnie in the foot. He didn't trust him anymore, not after what he did to Curtis, and decides to leave him behind as bait for the Crossed while they sneak inside the vault. The two men finally get inside the main bunker, but whoever was inside is long dead and their bodies are dismembered on the ground. Warren goes searching for survivors through the bunker while Washington stays behind because he wants to open another door, but he doesn't have the code to do it. Warren returns and claims he found another way out of the bunker, somewhere the Crossed haven't been yet, but he doesn't want to leave just yet. In the past, the two hunters walk inside a dark cave and stumble across other races of people and animals who were being kept prisoners by the Bloodmen. They eventually make it out on the other side and watch as the village was burning to the ground and its people turning on each other. Big Brother and Big Sister are trying to escape on top of a giant mammoth, but Lion is tired of being afraid and jumps on top of the elephant, determined to kill both of them. The two guys find a hidden truck that was parked near the exit and was ready for a quick getaway. Warren convinces Washington to just drive away and return later when the Cross decide to leave, but while searching for the car's keys, he finds the secret code to the vault. He wants to stay behind and find the truth about the Crossed virus. Maybe the professor did find a cure after all. Meanwhile, Warren will drive away and lure the Cross to his location, promising to return later if he gets away. The code works, and Washington manages to get inside, and it's everything he had ever hoped for. Every piece of evidence about the virus was hidden here, including artifacts and weapons from 75,000 years ago. The man begins reading and he learns about Lion and his friends, who were captured by the Blood Men. They tried to fight Big Brother and Big Sister together, but they were bigger and stronger and didn't stand a chance. However, Lion sees a crossed person hanging on the giant mammoth, and he splashes his blood all over their faces. The virus spreads quickly through their bodies, and Big Brother and Big Sister turn crossed. They begin fighting and attacking each other, culminating in them killing each other in a fight to the death. Lion thinks he is safe now and wants to return home, but that's when the true god of the Blood Men is finally revealed. It was a hideous and giant creature, with many faces and mouths, and it would never let him escape. Washington stops reading and checks the monitors and realizes that ever since they arrived here, somebody's been watching them on CCTV cameras. It was Professor Nelson and Amy, his ex-girlfriend, who were now crossed themselves. They begin torturing him and reveal the truth, that now they are the Big Brother and Big Sister, and Washington will take the place of the first child, meaning that he will get sacrificed soon. Warren is eventually cornered and captured by the Crossed, but before they could violate him, the professor shows up and calls them uncivilized. Unlike the other Crossed, he retains his intelligence and wants to be their leader. Washington was barely alive, as he was being cooked alive by Amy, who was also tasting his flesh. They plan to do the same thing to Warren as well, and they begin impaling him on wooden boards, as Washington watches the entire scene. Once the infection spread across the country, the president declared a federal state of emergency and imposed martial law. The Crossed took over the streets and attacked, dismembered, and killed everyone they could get their hands on. One such event happened in a private medical clinic when the staff there got infected and butchered a young lady on the operating table. In the present, two girls, Olivia and Morgan, used makeup to disguise themselves to look infected and are sneaking on the empty streets, heading towards a bridge that's partially destroyed. A group of people are living on this bridge, but they get into a heated argument when one of them started a fire. Craig gives Russ a hard time because the fire could have alerted the Crossed, but he wanted to cauterize a wound on his leg which was infected. Richard is the oldest of the group and the person in charge, and he tells young Tyree to avoid conflicts with the other group members because things can quickly deteriorate. Everyone is pissed with Russ for starting the fire, which could alert the Crossed to their location, but luckily they haven't been spotted just yet. Craig and his girlfriend Sarah see the two girls from earlier approaching the bridge in a boat, but they think they are infected. The group throws rocks at them, trying to deter them from getting on top, but the girls claim the cross on their faces is only makeup and they aren't really infected. Meanwhile, inside the city, the hospital staff from earlier sees people on the bridge, and they plot to hunt them down and them. The girls were allowed to get onto the bridge, but they were forced to sleep inside one of the cars. In the morning, Chuck ambushes them and asks them to prove that they aren't infected. He asks Morgan to take off her clothes completely because he doesn't want to take any chances, even though they didn't have any cross marks on their faces. The others arrive and confront him about being an asshole, with Sarah even accusing him of being some kind of pervert. Apparently, the girls came here all the way from Oklahoma, where they attended a horror convention. They claim to know a lot of things about the Crossed, including how the infection spreads from person to person, but that's not all. They pull out a survival manual, which contains all kinds of information on how to survive a zombie apocalypse. Dylan and Tyler go fishing and talk about the new girls, remarking that they're going to cause a lot of trouble. Morgan asks what kind of supplies they have, weapons, medicine, and what about the food. She claims that the food might be contaminated and nothing they catch is safe to eat, but what other options do they have? The medical staff wants to storm the bridge and attack the people there, but they can't do it alone, so they recruit another group that's been living inside the city. After a short confrontation, they agree to join forces and storm the bridge, where they're gonna get a bunch of fresh meat to They eventually arrive on the other side of the bridge driving an ambulance, and even though they can't get on the other side, the people are terrified. They don't know how they were able to find them, but the two girls claim they could see the tents from the mainland. That's how they knew to come here in the first place. Morgan takes off her clothes and taunts the guys, asking them to come and get her. One of them is stupid enough to try and jump, but he fails miserably and falls to his death, breaking his body in half on one of the metal rods. The group splits into smaller teams, each guarding a designated section of the bridge, ensuring that the Crossed don't climb on top. They think that Russ might have been bitten and is infected with the Crossed virus, but he actually hurt himself. When he came back home, his wife was already turned and having sex with his neighbor on the front lawn. He took an axe and wanted to kill them, but he missed the first time and hit his leg, which caused the wound. Chuck and Morgan watched the Crossed mutilating one of their own by cutting off his penis and attaching another one, which used to belong to a horse. The entire scene was horrifying and disgusting, but it also made Morgan extremely horny. She wants Chuck to make love to her, but only if he has condoms, which he doesn't, so better luck next time. The group has another meeting discussing the chain of command, which they need if they want to survive this. They also need to go to the mainland and search for supplies because they're not gonna last much longer here. Some of the men volunteer, and since Craig is the strongest of them, he was appointed team leader. Before leaving, Barbie tries to seduce Tyree, flaunting her amazing breasts and looking all cute for him. Morgan confronts her, accusing her of leading him on, knowing too well that she doesn't actually want to do anything. She is just begging for attention. This pisses Barbie off and she tries to punch her, but she isn't fast enough and misses. Tyree tries to de-escalate the situation and Morgan and Olivia eventually leave, but Barbie was fuming. Next, the two girls try to pin Richard against Tyree, claiming there is something going on between him and Barbie, and if shit goes down, he's not gonna have their back. Craig and Sarah make love before the mission, but she couldn't help but worry about what would happen to her if he doesn't come back. Before leaving the safety of the bridge, Olivia gives them a couple of final pointers, asking them to follow Craig's orders and be careful. They arrive safely on the mainland and decide to sink the boat, just in case someone decides to steal it. The town was still further inland, and they have to cross the highway to get there, but they find something inside one of the trunks. It was a man who's been mutilated and had his eyes ripped out, but he was still alive. The man panics and starts screaming, which alerts the Crossed in the area, who come rushing. The group runs away, but the man is left behind, and the Crossed take turns abusing him. Back on the bridge, Morgan and Olive create even more trouble between the group by pining Russ against Richard, who's been the group leader so far. Their plan to break apart the group was working, accusing Richard of having a personal agenda which might put the others in danger. Russ lures Richard to the edge of the bridge, claiming that the bridge structure is fragile and the bridge might collapse soon if they are not careful. However, this wasn't the real reason he brought him to the edge. When he wasn't looking, Russ pushes him over the edge and into the water. He then goes back and tells Barbie that he doesn't know where he went. He's probably keeping watch somewhere on the bridge, even though Morgan and Olivia knew the truth. The group arrive on the edge of the city, but they hear noises coming from a dumpster. Inside, they find a Crossed girl and her family who've been brutally killed, but they don't know what to do with her. Austin thinks they should kill it and takes the shovel to finish her off, when out of nowhere, a tiger jumps from the garbage and attacks them. He must have escaped from the zoo and was incredibly hungry. He instantly kills Austin while the rest run inside a shopping mall. Inside, they find Chuck, who was stockpiling condoms, claiming that Morgan promised to make love with him if he finds protection. Craig thinks she was lying to him in order to get him to join the group. It was her plan all along to get everybody off the bridge. The group is eventually overrun by the Crossed and the men are killed one by one. Craig falls on the ground and is about to get killed by one of them, and as his final words, he apologizes to Sarah for not coming back for her. Meanwhile, on the bridge, the Crossed were getting anxious and were turning on each other, attacking and mutilating like they always do. Morgan insinuates that Craig and Barbie have been having an affair, which wasn't true, of course, but Sarah believes it. The two girls get into a heated confrontation and start pushing each other around, while the Crossed watched everything from the other side of the bridge. Tyree tries to intervene and stop them, but Sarah hits Barbie over the head with a rock, which kills her on the spot. On the mainland, the last person to get grabbed by the Crossed is Dylan, who tried to blow his own brains out but failed to kill himself. One of them sticks her finger inside the gunshot wound, infecting him and turning him crossed. Russ arrives and claims that Sarah killed Barbie because she was infected, probably from eating infected canned food, just like the girls suggested. He wants to kill her, but Tyree tries to stop him, and during the confrontation, he kills him with a baseball bat. The guilt of killing another person is too much for Sarah to handle, and she jumps over the edge into the freezing river below. Sadly, she lands on her head, which breaks her neck and kills her. After this, Morgan and Olivia finally come clean and tell Tyree the real reason they came here. Ever since they were accepted into the group, they've been trying to disband them and make them turn on each other, and it was all because they wanted to get their stuff. The guys from the mainland aren't coming because they are probably dead, same as Richard, who got pushed into the water by Russ. They want to do the same to him as well, but out of nowhere, the guys return on the bridge, but they were all crossed now. They attack the girls and Tyree tries to save them, but there are too many of them. Morgan gets blood all over her face and Olivia wants to kill her, claiming it's written in the survival manual. In plague times, the primary responsibility is personal survival, which, in some cases, will require the elimination of friends and loved ones who have been exposed to the virus. This is too much for Tyree to take, and he willingly jumps in the water, but unlike Sarah, he jumps feet first. Morgan eventually turns and jumps her friend and pins her to the ground, while the other Crossed prepare to abuse her. Tyree survives the impact and swims all the way to shore, where Richard lends him a hand, being thankful that he listened to his advice and jumped feet first, which saved his life. Jack has always been the best son a mother could ever ask for. He's never late for dinner and is always painfully polite, unlike his brother Clancy, who's always late and has a way with words all his own. While Jack was the smart child of the family and had a bright future, his brother had collected 3 arrests for vandalism and public lewdness by the age of 15. As soon as he turned 18, Clancy left home to be free and live on his own, not giving a fuck about his mother and brother. Jack, on the other hand, went to college and got a degree in psychology and hadn't seen his brother in 6 years. When the outbreak started, he was living in a private community far away from any city, which hadn't been in contact with the Crossed just yet. Jack took Tiffany into his home and offered her shelter, because she was all alone after her entire family was brutally killed. One night somebody crashed into his garage door and Jack rushed down to see what had happened. It was his brother, who threatened to stab him if he didn't do as he was told. Clancy spent most of his life drinking, doing drugs, and other kinds of nasty things to his body. He knew there was no hope for someone like him long before the Crossed. He wants Jack to lock him inside the room and become his first real patient, while trying to figure out what goes on inside the brain of a Crossed. He then takes a piece of infected human flesh and bites it, infecting himself with the Crossed virus. It only took a couple of seconds for the virus to do its thing, and Jack was forced to lock him inside. Tiffany arrives, but Clancy refuses to say anything, and Jack doesn't understand why he was being quiet. The Crossed aren't usually like that. Later in private, Clancy speaks, claiming he wants his brother to open the door so he can fuck him and then kill him. Jack pulls up a chair and decides to treat his brother like a patient, asking him how long he has felt that way. Several weeks ago, Clancy was in a bar with his friend Saul, drinking as much as they could, trying to forget about the Crossed apocalypse. Luckily, the bar was in the middle of nowhere, and they were safe for now, so Clancy decided to tell him about his brother. In the present, Jack was trying to interrogate his brother, but except for the fact that he was extremely horny and wanted to hump everything, he wasn't being too cooperative. At one point, he used his finger to stab himself in the eye. The Crossed have no will for self-preservation, and they often mutilate themselves. Jack thinks there's no hope in understanding the Crossed or helping them, but Tiffany thinks that maybe there is hope. Maybe they are evolving just like humans from monkeys. Jack remembers an embarrassing moment when his brother made fun of him in front of his crush, who just wanted them to be friends, while doing it with other boys from school. His mother yelled at him for being mean to his brother, but he didn't care and thought she was taking Jack's side. In the present, the session continues, but without much luck. Things were pretty much the same, and Clancy was biting his finger and using them to fuck himself in the ass. Jack doesn't believe he can help his brother, but Tiffany thinks otherwise, and they get into a heated argument. She accuses him of not wanting to help his brother and claims he isn't better than the Crossed. Meanwhile, on the edge of town, Saul, the man from the bar and Clancy's friend, was walking naked through the forest trying to find the community, and he is eventually successful. Tiffany goes alone to talk to Clancy, but he wasn't responding, which she liked anyway, claiming she only wants someone to listen to her. She tells him how she saw her entire family get attacked and slaughtered by the Crossed, including her younger brother, and all she could do was run away and hide. She feels connected to him and shares personal moments from her life, even though Clancy was sitting behind the door with 3 of his fingers in his ass. Saul enters the town and gets onto the baseball field, but there is nobody around, so he decides to pleasure himself. Someone saw him and the people in the community are scared, but they don't want to leave this place. It's been safe so far. Jack decides to board up his house, sealing all of the windows and doors, including the door to his brother's room. During the night, he gets drunk and decides to talk to his brother again, but this time he manages to get him angry, causing him to punch the door with his fist. He eventually decides to go for a walk and goes into a back alley where he slips and falls on the ground. He sleeps for the next couple of hours, but when he wakes up, there is a dead body next to him. The town was now overrun with the Crossed, and he sees a bunch of them attacking his neighbor and killing him in the middle of the street. He quietly sneaks back inside the house through a small window, which he makes sure to board up again. He goes up the stairs and is shocked to find Tiffany pleasuring herself in front of his brother's room. Jack is overwhelmed with a series of images, remembering everything. He was caught pleasuring himself by other people, including his own mother. Tiffany is embarrassed, claiming it's not what it looks like and that her situation is very complicated and has nothing to do with him. Jack doesn't want to hear her explanation and gets angry, accusing her of being a just like all other women. This pisses her off and she punches him and then spits on his face. He instantly regrets calling her a slut and tries to apologize, but she doesn't want to listen and goes downstairs. She wants to leave the house and opens the main door, but what she sees next shocks her. The Crossed had invaded the small town and were viciously attacking and mutilating everyone who wasn't infected. She panics and closes the door, reconsidering her decision to go outside. When Jack graduated university, Clancy called him to congratulate him, even though they had not spoken in years. Even though at first it seemed like he had nice intentions, he quickly turns it around, claiming that one day the world is going to see him for what he truly is, a frightened, stunted dipshit who never cared about anyone but himself. And when that's going to happen, he's gonna be right there to laugh his ass off. Jack comes up with a plan. He wants to go outside and lure the Crossed away, giving Tiffany a chance to run away. Before doing this, he wants to say goodbye to his brother and goes back upstairs to talk one final time. He tells him his honest diagnosis, that Clancy hasn't made any progress at all, and that he was always emotionally stunted, and that didn't really change once he became a Crossed. Finally, he wants to thank him for not saying anything to Tiffany, but he was just waiting for the right time. Apparently, when they were growing up, Jack used to abuse him by putting his finger inside his, but their mother never believed him. Tiffany overhears everything and accuses Jack of sabotaging his brother's entire life by taking advantage of him. Jack claims he was just a kid and didn't know any better, but she doesn't want to listen and they get into a heated argument. She wants to leave again, but this time Jack finally has enough and pushes her outside. The Crossed were waiting for them, and they quickly jump her, while she curses him and prays that he burns in hell. Jack then goes upstairs, opens his brother's room, and then sits next to him on the floor. Clancy asks his brother if he wants to, and after thinking it over for a few seconds, his brother agrees. The next story begins inside a comic book shop, where 4 friends have been hiding for the past year. These guys love comic books, and Lance complains that the worst thing about the outbreak is that they'll never know how their favorite stories are gonna end. But they weren't alone. Leia used to be a famous comic book writer, and the guys have been keeping her hostage this whole time. They've been taking turns abusing her, getting their needs taken care of, while they feed her scraps. They want her to write them a new comic book, one that gives them hope in these hard times and inspires them, and in exchange, they promise to stop violating her. She creates a story about the Crossed attacking and abusing people, but they are confronted by a new superhero, one called the Anti-Crossed. This hero is immune to the Crossed infection, including blood and sperm, and can easily take out groups of them with ease. The guys loved the new comic and couldn't wait until she wrote another issue, and they even fed her more food as a reward. However, it didn't take long until Lance got the urges again, and he comes to her room with dirty thoughts. He vomits her on top of the table, claiming he doesn't care about the agreement because sometimes creatives need to learn to put their egos aside and just suck it up. The next issue of the Anti-Crossed wasn't as good as the others, and it involved the hero giving a big moral speech about abusing people. This pisses the guys off, and Lance puts a gun to her head, threatening to kill her. Suddenly they hear noises coming from outside. It was a gay couple who were desperately looking for someplace safe to stay, and they think the comic book store might be a good idea. The 2 men decide to go inside the comic book shop, and Lance welcomes them in with open arms. Richard was ecstatic. He hadn't seen other people in almost a year, and on top of that, he loves comic books. The 2 men have been in a loving relationship for the past 8 years, but Lance claims they welcome all comic fans of any sexual orientation. They bring Leia out of the storage room and force her to act nice and pretend like she isn't their prisoner. Richard knows her, and he compliments her writing skills, but Lance thinks it's a good idea to show them the newest issue of the Anti-Crossed. Leia was reluctant at first, claiming it wasn't finished, but he insisted. Richard finds it pretty entertaining and funny, having a hero who is immune to the Crossed virus, but Lance finds it suspicious. In the newest issue, the Anti-Crossed finds Lance, Kit, and Polly pleasuring each other inside the store. They look up to him and claim he is a beacon of hope in this new world, filled with angry feminists, queers, and transsexuals. But to their surprise, the Anti-Crossed isn't a biological male himself. He is actually a transvestite. He then takes out his fake penis and attacks the young guys, killing them viciously just like the Crossed used to do. Lance gets pissed and he wants to kill Leia. He sends Polly to fetch her, but she ambushes him from behind. Kit thinks he lost his mind and wants to stop him, but during the altercation, Reggie gets killed instead. Leia attacks him from behind using a stapler, giving Richard and his boyfriend a chance to get involved. The 2 men are able to pin him to the ground, but Leia wants to kill him herself. They abused her so much for the past year that she couldn't wait to get her revenge. She then killed Kit as well by putting a bullet through his head, even though he wanted to help her. In the end, Leia wants to leave the comic book store, then lights it on fire, leaving the guys to burn among their beloved comic book characters. The next story takes place inside a bunker, one that was designed to withstand the apocalypse. Cody is the guy who built this place, so he regularly keeps watch and checks the outside world through the periscope. One day he sees a man who wanted to get inside the bunker because he was being chased by Crossed. The guy used to be rich and he paid for most of the construction. He had the right to go inside, but Cody refuses to open the hatch. He doesn't want to risk letting the Crossed get inside, and he was right because he was quickly killed by them. There were many rich people who paid for the bunker's construction, but when the Crossed virus spread, they just didn't have enough time to make it inside. Cody lived in the suburbs, very close to where the bunker is located, and he was the first to get there. Bobby Lee was another rich bastard who paid to get inside, but Cody knew he was going to be trouble from the start. While he wasn't looking, he shot him in the head but left Ben alive, aka the helicopter pilot, because he was a trained mechanic and could be useful in the future. They got a few others who made it before the roads were pretty much impassable, but some of them weren't dealing with the whole apocalypse situation. This place wasn't so bad. In some ways it was a lot better than the life Cody used to have, but things would take a dark turn soon. One of the men got appendicitis and died because they didn't have an actual doctor inside, and Tanya took her own life. Cody checks the periscope to see if the Crossed were still around and catches a big guy looking back at him. He knew right away this guy was special. He looked different and even spoke to them, asking to let him inside. The bunker had 3 vents in total, and the Crossed quickly found them and destroyed them. The group inside now has about 2 weeks left of oxygen. If the Crossed don't get bored and leave, they are in big trouble. 10 days had passed, and the Crossed were still out there, camping the main entrance inside the bunker and waiting for the people to rush outside. Cody comes up with a plan. He wants the group to split into 2 teams and make a run for it. One of the groups goes with Ben and tries to get away in the helicopter, while the second goes inside the garage and tries to get away by driving one of the cars. They eventually open the main door, and the Crossed rush inside, trying to anyone they can get their hands on. The group from the garage barely makes it out, while the Crossed wait for them on the main road. Ben and the others make it to the helicopter, but the big guy was waiting for them. One of the cars crashes into a tree, and the entire family is on the side of the road. The big guy forces Ben to pilot the helicopter and follow Cody and Anna while they were trying to get away. He cuts his throat and forces him to crash the helicopter while the big guy jumps outside before the impact. Anna is instantly killed in the crash, but Cody survives, even though he wishes he was dead. The big guy grabs him and prepares to end him, but Cody begs for his life, claiming he built this bunker and many more like it, and if he wants, he can take him there. The other Crossed call him Smokey, and he goes back in the bunker and finds the library. Cody says that books are meant to help humanity do things and make things work. You can even rebuild civilization with them. Smokey orders the Crossed to stop destroying the bunker because he has an idea. He wants Cody to help him rebuild the world, but that's easier said than done. If he refuses, he will kill him. Cody did exactly what he said he would do. He took the Crossed to other bunkers just like the one he built before. He tricked the people into opening the doors, claiming he had medicine to offer them, and they fell for it. The Crossed were swift to take over the entire thing, but Cody had another idea. He claims they need other normal people if they are to rebuild the world and asks him to leave some of them alive. At first, Cody pretended to be in the same situation as them, telling them that Smokey is smarter than the other Crossed, but he isn't the only one. There are 2 other female Crossed just as smart, and Smokey wants to build another city in his image and maybe lure them to come to him. The people quickly realize that Cody is to blame for their situation, and they turned on him, calling him a traitor to humans. The Crossed aren't like Smokey. Most of them are savages, and their only goal in life is to kill other people. But Cody thinks he can control them if he finds a way to satisfy their appetite for violence. So they organized fighting games, mostly among the Crossed, but they quickly realized they would much rather kill normal humans than each other. However, regular people are in short supply, and if they want to have a constant flow of them, they need to make more. Cody suggests making breeding camps where normal people fuck each other for the purpose of creating babies. Of course, he was the one who violated the women, even though they loathed him for being a traitor, but Cody was a survivalist. Meanwhile, the Crossed were doing the same thing, although it was much easier to get the Crossed women to have sex. Along the way, they met Violet, who used to be a doctor, and she tended to all the future mothers. She and Cody eventually got into a relationship, and just like him, she was a survivalist as well. She claims that whatever Smokey is building here will fail because the Crossed only have one purpose, to kill, and they can't be trained to do other things. The human babies weren't going to be anything other than meat for the Crossed to abuse, but as soon as Cody saw the first sonogram, he knew he wasn't going to let it happen. Smokey moved them into a nearby city named Smokeyville, which was bigger and even had a hospital, which Cody quickly got working. He even looked proud of the thing he was creating. Civilization for the Crossed, even though he was the only one capable of appreciating it. Things progressed quickly, and Cody was allowed to live alone with Violet in a house with solar panels, but he had other intentions. He wants revenge, claiming the Crossed destroyed their world and now he wants to destroy theirs. Smokeyville continued to grow, attracting other Crossed from all over the areas. Some were friendly and just followed Smokey, while others were more dangerous. He took matters into his own hands and dealt with anyone who didn't submit to him. While he was busy, Cody sneaked inside the hospital where they were keeping the pregnant women, but the place was closely guarded. He and Violet separated. She went to hotwire an ambulance, planning to use it to take the pregnant women, while he went to the armory to stockpile weapons. Unfortunately, someone found Violet and mutilated her, cutting off her nose and stealing her eye. It was Smokey's second in command. He was extremely loyal and followed his master's orders. After dealing with him, Cody went inside the maternity where the women were being kept, together with the crossed women. But before he could do anything, Smokey showed up and chopped off his hand with the axe. He claimed he didn't need him anymore. They built this city together and he wanted Cody to see it up close, so he threw him through the window. As he was falling towards the ground, Cody couldn't help but rethink his decision. He gave the crossed the world, only for a few lousy months of life. Smokey went into the maternity, but the crossed men had run inside and infected all of the pregnant women, turning them crazy. He got mad and viciously attacked them, killing everyone, destroying his own dream of breeding and creating the perfect crossed. He went back outside and realized he can't do this alone. He needs to find other smart crossed like himself. He went on a rampage, jumping from city to city, killing everyone who didn't submit to him and amassing a giant army. While the others behaved like crazy people and lived like animals, Smokey was taking care of himself and even bathing whenever he had the chance. Eventually, they arrived in Gulfport, Mississippi, and saw a warship docked a few miles off the coast. The captain wanted to go ashore to find some more supplies, but he didn't have to, because the crossed were coming to him in smaller boats. While the crew was distracted, Smokey sneaked from behind and climbed aboard, attacking them from behind. The crew was easily dealt with, but he didn't want to kill the captain. Instead, he wanted to talk. The captain recognized him. He had heard a radio message from Cheyenne Mountain, claiming that a smarter crossed, with a fireman's coat and an axe, took over the base. Smokey wanted to know if they had heard about other crossed like him, smart ones, and he was in luck. The captain claimed he had heard about twin sisters in the Florida Keys 2 months ago, and Smokey wanted to go there. The captain eventually got cocky and mocked him, which prompted Smokey to kill him and feed him to his people. Luckily, he didn't need him to pilot the ship, and there were still a couple of sailors left alive. After a couple of days of sailing, they arrived in Key West, Florida, but they were greeted with hostility by other crossed. A swift battle erupted, and Smokey and his people easily dealt with them. One of the locals mentioned the twin sisters, claiming they were their queens, living inside a big luxury resort. Smokey demanded that they take him to see them, but when he got there, it wasn't what he expected. The place was in complete chaos, and the 2 girls were living in the middle of a terrible display of indecency. They were shocked to see such a big guy like him, but he was very happy to hear them speak, signaling that they were smarter than the rest. What followed next was an intense session in the bedroom. Threesomes, handcuffs, toys, and even another person watching, whatever you might think of, happened in that bedroom. The 3 of them were smarter than the others, and Smokey wanted them to have babies together. However, it's not like the girls hadn't tried before, but all of the children came out retarded, just like the rest. However, Smokey isn't like the other men here, and he is confident that if they try, the results will be different. The crossed have no future, they only exist to die. But he claims they are the future, and he wants to make a world, their world. Ultimately, the girls agreed, and after a couple of weeks, they got pregnant. Now, they could start having sex with other people because they got tired of him, but he didn't care anymore. He was going to be a father soon. This place quickly ran out of food and medicine, so the group decided to go and live somewhere else. They made it all the way to Key Largo, but they took with them a sailor from the warship, who was locked inside a coffin all this time. Smokey wanted him to teach them how to stay alive, what they needed to do, and where to go. They eventually found an abandoned farm, which still had solar panels and plenty of animals left alive. The girls, however, were unhappy, and ordered Smokey to go out and find things to make their life more enjoyable. Things like recliners, real beds, porn to watch, maybe even weed, and definitely people to torture. He went to Coral Gables and found people hiding there, but they stood no chance against his band of crossed. He came back with plenty of food and porn to keep the girls entertained, but they still wanted the weed to smoke, even though it was bad for the babies. A couple of months later, the first twin went into labor and the sailor was assisting the birth, but she wanted him to play with her clit while he was down there. Smokey's plan was coming along, and he was now a father to a beautiful crossed baby boy. Just as soon as they were done giving birth, he wanted them to make love again so he could produce more babies, but the girls needed a break. When they refused, he got violent and slammed one of them against the wall, but they threatened to interrupt the pregnancy if he even tried. For now, they just wanted a break to have more fun, while the sailor was left to take care of the babies. He tried making love with other crossed women, but they wanted to hurt themselves, so he was forced to immobilize them. One of the babies tried to talk, and Smokey thought he might be smart just like him, but it was still too early to tell. Another group of crossed came by the farm. They called these ones skin suits because they covered their bodies with the skins taken from people. They were no match for Smokey and his people, but more of them came 6 months later. This time it was another kind of crust. Eventually the babies grew, and one of them even said his first words, but it wasn't what Smokey expected. He seemed to be a moron just like the others, but the girls mocked him, calling him stupid and laughing in his face. He wanted to leave the farm and travel to other parts of the world, hoping to find other smart crossed, but the girls liked it here now, and they didn't want to leave. They continued to mock him, calling him a deadbeat father if he decided to leave and search for other crossed instead of taking care of the mothers and his kids. He finally had enough and went outside to have a beer with the sailor while he watched his farm chaos, as his people did whatever they wanted. They spent the next 13 years living on this farm, eventually learning to grow their own food and survive. But Smokey was feeling miserable because he failed to accomplish his dream of building a brand new world for his people. The girls were out hunting and they came back with a few batches of humans, whom they could torture as they pleased. One of the girls claimed they'd heard rumors of other smart crossed people somewhere in Tennessee, which isn't far from them. They got into another heated argument because, according to them, they should be living their lives, helping the world and vandalizing everything, instead of wasting time searching for other smart people like themselves. Smokey took his frustration out by killing one of the men who wasn't playing by the rules and was violating the horses. One of the girls eventually agreed to let him take a scouting group and head over to Tennessee. Maybe he would get lucky and find what he was looking for. The group left the next day and he took the sailor with him. Smokey got into a personal existential crisis, claiming that the crossed only exist to clean the planet and then die, but he didn't want to end up like that. He is better than that. Out of nowhere he attacked the other crossed and chopped off their heads, leaving no one alive. He then set the sailor free, asking him to head up north to Canada, where it's cold and fewer crossed, while he continued the journey alone. The sailor thanked him for taking care of him all this time. If it wasn't for him, the others would have eaten him alive a long time ago. But Smokey had a plan for him as well. While he was busy packing his things, he sneaked up behind him and broke his neck, instantly killing him. The girls came out from the forest, armed to the teeth, claiming they got tired of him being the boss. The other crossed followed his orders because he was the biggest and strongest, so they wanted to take him out. One of the men that was together with them was actually Smokey's kid, and he was smart all along. He just didn't talk when he was around because he thought his dad was an idiot compared to him, who never bothered to be a real father to him. There was no coming back from this, and the girls wanted to take him out, but Smokey attacked them with his axe. He was injured and fell into the nearby river, and he was quickly dragged underneath by the strong current. They decided not to chase after him, but just keep an eye out for him if he decided to come back. The kid wanted to pick up his axe, but the mothers refused to let him have it, claiming he already looks too much like his dad. Fortunately, Smokey wasn't killed in the attack, and he got out of the river on the other side. Even though he was injured, he smiled, content that his plan worked out in the end, and he was able to produce a smart cross just like he always wanted.